Chapter 3066. The Full Moon 1. With his soft and unadorable son in his arms, the demon wanted to cry. Who could tell him how to shut this noisy little thing up? Schwer had just given birth and needed to rest. If he cried like this, he would disturb her rest. The demon was very dissatisfied. The son he was carrying was also not very satisfied. He kept kicking his legs hard, trying to escape from the arms of this stepfather. However, he was small and weak. After struggling a few times, he still could not escape. When Leng Qingdan saw this, he chuckled and said, "Look at this little guy, so energetic. What a cute little thing." As a great-grandfather, he was very satisfied, but at this time, as a father, he suddenly felt at a loss. Schwer, this brat seems to have peed. Ah! Leng Ruoxue was a little surprised and hurriedly carried little babe over. At the same time, she saw that there was a wet patch on the evildoer's pants. This made her feel extremely puzzled. It shouldn't be. She had clearly put on baby underwear for the child. But when he pulled open little babe's little pants to take a look, he really peed. What made her even more surprised was that babe did not pee on her underwear, but on the outside. Leng Ruoxue didn't really know what to say anymore. However, she would never have thought that little Bei did it on purpose. After all, such a young child, even if he had the bloodline of a god, it was impossible for him to have so many thoughts when he was just born, right? But in reality, little Babe really did it on purpose. This could also be considered as giving his stepfather a chance to show off his might. However, a child was still a child. Who would care about such a display of power? The first round of PK between the son and the father was considered a draw. Of course, this was also because the evildoer was letting the child have his way. After all, the child was still young, so he did not argue with the child. After Leng Ruoxue cleaned up the child, she decided to feed little Babe. Leng Qingtian and Leng Ruhen naturally left tactfully. Songy didn't plan to leave at first, but he was thrown out by the demon. After the crowd was cleared, Leng Ruoxue looked at the demon without saying a word. The moment the demon saw her, he couldn't help but say aggrievedly, "Schwer, you're not thinking of driving me away, are you? You should also leave." With a demon around, Leng Ruoxue would feel shy. "With what? I'm your husband." The demon was not willing to leave. He wanted to stay here and monitor these brats so that they wouldn't take advantage of his wife. "I'll be embarrassed if you stay here," Leng Ruoxue said honestly. When the demon heard this, he laughed happily and said with a little pride, "What are you shy about? It's not like I haven't seen it before. Which part of your body isn't mine?" Hearing the demon's words, Leng Ruoxue had no choice but to compromise. However, when Leng Ruoxue started feeding Xiaobei, the demon regretted it. He really shouldn't be here. Seeing a man taking advantage of his wife with his own eyes, it was really glaring no matter how he looked at it. He really wanted to break the feeling of throwing that stinky brat away. Even if that brat was his own son. Just like that, under the demon's intense and covetous gaze, the three little Babe endured the great pressure and bravely finished their first breast milk. After that, the evildoer threw the three little babes to Leng Qingtun, Leng Ruhen and Song. Half a month later, the demon wanted to wean his son. However, Leng Ruoxue did not agree. After all, the child was still young. Because of this, the couple was in a deadlock. The demon was so angry that he ignored Schwer for a few days. For a time, whether it was in the bracelet or in the villa, the low air pressure and cold current made people shiver. It could be seen that the mistress of the dark world was furious. And the unlucky ones were the small characters like them. In the end, it was Leng Ruoxue who stepped in to settle the matter. And she could only fight for half a month's welfare for her three sons. In other words, after her sons were 1 month old, she would have to stop breastfeeding them. Although Leng Ruoxue felt that she was mistreating her son, she thought about it carefully. Her son was being raised by another woman, and her husband was her husband. Thus, she felt at ease. After all, her husband was the one who would accompany her for the rest of her life, and he was the most important person. In this matter, the evildoer had won the final victory. This was enough to prove that although his wife had a son, she still loved him the most. Therefore, he was satisfied. In terms of the important position in his wife's heart, the evildoer was completely superior. After solving the problem of the three little bees' meals, the matter of giving the children names was brought up to the agenda again. Logically speaking, little babe's name should have been thought of before she was born, but at that time, no one knew when the baby would be born, so they were not in a hurry. After Shui-er's stomach had gotten bigger, all of their attention had been on Shui, so they had completely forgotten about the matter of naming. After the child was born, because of the problem of little babe's food, Shui-er and the demon had a mutual opinion. As a result, the name of the child was delayed again. Now, it was finally time to give the child a name. When everyone asked for the demon's opinion, he, as the father, said very irresponsibly, "Anything. You can call me whatever you want." Everyone was stunned. How could he be a father like this? He was really irresponsible. That was his own son. After hearing the demon's words, everyone's disapproving eyes swept over the demon, but he didn't care at all. According to his thoughts, what kind of name was that? He could wait for the child to grow up and take it himself. It was because he was born without a name. In this aspect, it was rare for Azure to stand on evildoer's side and speak his mind. He'll let Xiaobei choose her own name in the future. Everyone disagreed. At this moment, the demon spoke again. Everyone here was named by your own parents? Uncle Long, did your parents give you your name? The demon asked calmly. I've never seen what my parents look like. After a pause, Uncle Long had no choice but to tell the truth. Alright, this one was probably born from the heavens and earth. Everyone was helpless, but human babies were different from beast babies. Human babies couldn't grow up on their own and had to be taken care of by adults when they were just born. But beast babies were different. Other people's babies could speak when they were born and could support themselves. It was not that everyone did not understand this logic, but he couldn't accept it. From this, it could be seen that human babies were still lacking in self-care ability compared to divine beast babies. No, it can't be compared like this. Unfortunately, the truth was right in front of them, and no one knew how to refute it. After a long period of silence, as Leng Ruox's biological grandfather and little babe's great-grandfather, Leng Qingtian had no choice but to speak. Everyone, Leng Qingtian had just said 2 words, but he didn't know how to continue. Saying that these 3 little bites couldn't be compared to anyone else, wasn't that just drawing hatred? He didn't dare to say this. Chapter 3067, The Full Moon, 2. Seeing him hesitating, the demon continued, He's just a kid. Therefore, I think that we should first train the 3 of them to take care of themselves, otherwise it will be terrible if they are raised as 3 good-for-nothing young masters in the future. The meaning of his words was very obvious. He was just short of directly saying that he would let the 3 children live and die on their own. When everyone heard this, they could not accept this. The 3 little babe were their hearts and souls. As their father, you might not feel heartache, but they did. The demon knew from everyone's expression that his words had angered them again. But he really thought so. Back then, when he was just born, didn't he rely on himself? If he could survive, why couldn't his children? It could be seen that he was not a father who would dote on his child. Of course, part of it was because he didn't like his child snatching his wife away from him, but he also sincerely hoped that his child could be independent as soon as possible and surpass his master. Therefore, he still had high hopes for his own child. What do you think about sending the child to the chaotic world? The demon continued. Not much. The child wasn't even a month old yet. There was no one there. If he was really sent there, not to mention whether his small body could withstand the violent spiritual energy in the chaotic world, even survival would be a problem. Although they also hoped that the child would be successful in the future, the child was still young. They couldn't bear to send Xiaobei to live in a desolate place at such a young age. This was really too much of a scam. You can't be a father like this. Was this still his biological father? The demon saw that no one was saying anything, but their expressions weren't too good. He knew that they wouldn't agree. In fact, he didn't expect them to agree with his decision now, but one day in the future, he would definitely send his children there to train. At that time, it would be useless no matter who disagreed. The reason why evildoer asked for their opinions was because everyone present was Shui Er's elder. Therefore he respected them very much. Moreover, the child was indeed a little young now, so he did not force her. As for the child's name, he really didn't care much about it. After that, Lung Qingtian asked for Shui Er's opinion and decided that 2 of the 3 children would take their father's surname, Yi, and 1 would take their mother's surname, Lin. The demon had no objections to this. After deciding on the child's surname, Lung Qingtian and the rest decided on the child's name themselves. As for Lung Ruoxue and the demon, one of them was focused on her confinement while the other was focused on serving her wife. Initially, based on Lung Ruoxue's physical condition, she felt that she was already fine. She had even used her divine power to repair her body. However, the demon insisted on making her lie in bed for a month and even said that all normal humans were like this. Lung Ruoxue was really helpless about this. The evildoer now did not treat the 3 little shells as ordinary human children, but as ordinary human women. So, although she was helpless, she still obediently stayed in bed to rest in order not to hurt her husband's good intentions. Other than feeding little babe, Lung Ruoxue spent most of her time alone with the demon. However, the truth was that she missed her child. She wanted to get closer to the child, but the evildoer said that she couldn't let the child develop the habit of sticking to her mother. It was not good for the child's growth. Hearing this, Lung Ruoxue really wanted to ridicule him. How is sticking to the mother bad for the child's growth? You're still sticking to your wife. Why didn't you say so? Although Lung Ruoxue understood that the evildoer wanted the child to be independent as soon as possible, the child had only been born for half a month. Wasn't it too cruel to leave her mother at such a young age? Moreover, Lung Ruoxue only wanted to be close to the child. She wouldn't really dote on the child, so why couldn't she? However, she also knew that now was not the time to argue with the evildoer over this matter. She had to wait until she was done with her confinement. Lung Ruoxue made up her mind that once she was allowed to get off the bed, she would definitely go play with her child. She was now under the control of her husband and had no choice. On this side, Lung Ruoxue was fighting with the evildoer. On the other side, Lung Qingtian and the others were also quarreling over the child's name. The cause of the matter was very simple. Everyone thought of a name for the baby and felt that they were the best. They all wanted to use their own names. As such, no one was willing to give in to the other. Just like that, everyone was in a deadlock because of the name. Even after Lung Ruoxue was done with her confinement and Xiaobei was a full moon, no one could come to a consensus on the name. Lung Ruoxue knew that this was not going to work. He had no choice but to go out personally and choose 3 names from the many names. The eldest and the second were named Yi Ruixing and Yi Ruiz respectively. The other baby was named Lung Ruichen. Among the 3 babies, Ruixing had a calm personality and was very much like an elder brother. Ruizi was a little black-bellied and had the most devilish personality. Only the third, Ruiyu, was heartless and a complete little foodie. As long as he had food to eat, he would be satisfied. And among the 3 little baby, Lung Ruoxue doted on third the most. Who asked this child to be so simple-minded? Lung Ruoxue didn't want to hold a 1-month-old celebration for her child, but seeing that her grandfather and the rest were all in high spirits and had long been preparing for the 1-month-old celebration, she didn't dare to dampen their spirits. Although there were no outsiders present at the full moon banquet, everyone was still in high spirits. The 3 little baby were being carried by Lung Qingtian, Lung Ruhan, and Song, and they were all laughing. Looking at such an adorable child, Lung Ruoxue was content with having a child. The highlight of the full moon banquet was the capture of Zhou that everyone had prepared. Logically speaking, according to the habits of an ordinary person, they would only catch their babies when they were 1 year old. However, Lung Ruoxue's 3 babies had the bloodline of a god. Needless to say, they were naturally gifted. They could sit up after being born a few days ago, and they could even crawl now. Therefore, they would naturally not grow up slowly like ordinary babies. It was the first time that they had held a ceremony for their children. Most importantly, they did not do it like ordinary people. They did not want to see what their children liked or what they wanted to develop in the future. They did it for someone to be the child's godfather. When Lung Ruoxue heard their motive, she was in a complete mess. Looking at Uncle Long, Lung Ruoxue wiped away her cold sweat and said, "Uncle Long, I'm already calling you uncle, and you still want to be my child's godfather? And Qing Ju and Feng Zhan, are you sure you can be fathers?" Lung Ruoxue looked at the little baby and little beast that she had called out and was speechless. "Sister, why can't I be a father?" Qing Ju was not convinced. "You're still a little baby. Besides, if you call me sister, you'll be the child's uncle. How can you be the child's godfather?" Lung Ruoxue reminded. "So, I'm the child's uncle? Then I won't be your godfather." Qing Ju immediately gave up when he heard that. He originally wanted to have a closer relationship with Xiaobei, but he didn't expect that he was her uncle. Then why was he fighting for a godfather? "Master, I'm already an adult. Why can't I be a godfather?" Master just doesn't like me." After dealing with Qing Ju, it was Feng Zhan's turn to feel wronged. "You're really old? Why do I always feel that you're still young?" Lung Ruoxue blinked her eyes and asked in disbelief. "Haha." When everyone heard Lung Ruoxue's words, they couldn't help but burst out laughing. When they were done laughing, Uncle Long said, "Shui, I'm not going to be a godfather, I'm going to be a godfather." "Well, Shui, but we're just trying to catch Joe for fun. So, you don't have to worry about it. It's not certain whether we'll catch the child or not." At this moment, Lung Qingtian also spoke. After taking care of the children for so long, he knew how good the three children's ideas were. "All right then." Hearing her grandfather's words, Lung Ruoxue was at her wit's end. It could be lively if he wanted to, and the moment of the capture of the Zhou was really not the usual kind of liveliness. After the capture of the week began, the first person to appear was naturally Lung Ruoxue's eldest son, Yi Ruixing. As soon as the baby appeared, he waved his meaty paws at the crowd in an imposing manner. Then he looked down at the items around him. Needless to say, these things were carefully selected by everyone, and were also gifts for the little children. Little Ruixing looked around, and then looked at his mother. He firmly crawled toward his beautiful and fragrant mother, and hugged her thigh. He raised his little head, looking cute, and asking for a hug and caress. The moment Lung Ruoxue saw him, she couldn't resist and immediately picked up her cute son. Little Ruixing gave his mother a loud and sweet kiss. At the same time, his devilish face darkened. Most of the people present were also unhappy. The little doll had no conscience. To think that they doted on him so much. He actually didn't give him any face at all. Seeing this, Lung Qingtian was secretly happy in his heart. As expected of the old Lung family's son, well done. Not long after, it was Ruiz's turn. As soon as the little guy appeared, he first got close to the onlookers and gave them a sweet date, then climbed to his seat to choose his favorite gift. He picked up almost every present, but under everyone's expectant eyes, he slowly put them down again. Just like that, he kept picking up and putting them down. At the same time, his beautiful starry eyes would calmly sweep over the crowd. When he saw everyone's disappointed expressions, the little baby smiled happily. Seeing him like this, everyone couldn't help but gnash their teeth in hatred. This little thing was really a cunning little fox. He didn't know who trained him. Azure's face was filled with pride. Who trained him? Do I need to say more? Of course, it was this. After Rui teased everyone present, he also directly crawled to his mother and played with her affectionately for a while. Then he crawled to Tsong's side and hugged Tsong's fluffy little body, unwilling to leave. Now, what else did everyone not understand? At the same time, everyone's sympathetic eyes swept towards the evildoer. This pitiful biological father. Did little babe not get close to him? However, the demon didn't care. After all, he was his son, so how could he run away from blood relations? From this, it could be seen that the genius was very confident. The last one to appear was Lung Ruoxue's most beloved Ruichin. When the little fellow came out, he was naturally different from his two brothers. He didn't get close to anyone, but climbed onto the table first, picked up the spirit fruit on the table and started to gnaw. Chapter 3068, The Cute Kids Training 1. The little guy ate very happily. He finished one after another and even smiled at his mother foolishly before continuing to eat. Everyone was speechless. Did this little guy have to be so greedy? Unfortunately, no matter what the crowd thought, little Rui Qiao did not care at all. Eating was his #1 priority. When he was satisfied, it was already an hour later. Then the little guy began to sleep. This time, everyone was even more helpless. However, they also understood the little fellow's temper. Don't look at how this little thing usually seemed to be very easy to talk to and easy to coax, but that was on the premise that he was not disturbed while eating. If someone dared to interrupt him while he was eating, then Rui Tian would definitely cry like a landslide and tsunami for you to see. This was also the main reason why no one dared to interrupt him. This small body was actually very strong at crying. Basically, no one could stop him except for his parents. It could be said that Rui Qiao had failed to catch Zhou. However, everyone was helpless. Capturing Zhou and whatnot was just a joke. After the 1-month-old celebration, the little fellow finally had the chance to interact more with his mother. Every day, other than spending time with her husband, Leng Ruoxue would play with the child. Of course, when she played with the child, she would definitely bring her husband along. This was also to allow the father and son to cultivate their relationship. However, in front of his 3 sons, a certain father always had a straight face, and the sons were not very willing to talk to their own father. Leng Ruoxue didn't know what to say about the way the 4 of them got along. Did they have to be so cold and aloof? When she thought of this, Leng Ruoxue started to feel cold. After her son and a certain father felt their mother's anger, they started to get closer. In any case, as long as Leng Ruoxue was present, the 3 sons and their father would just play as brothers. When she wasn't around, they would just do what they had to. Actually, it wasn't that Leng Ruoxue didn't know that these 4 guys were dealing with her. However, she pretended not to know and even pushed a large part of the responsibility of taking care of her son onto her husband's shoulders. His son had stopped breastfeeding. Now, in addition to eating spiritual fruits, he would also drink some milk. The work of boiling the milk naturally fell to the demon. It didn't matter, he could learn slowly. Just like that, after wasting the milk a few times, the demon finally managed to do the job of boiling milk well. He had to learn it seriously. His wife was watching him as a supervisor. When they were feeding little babe milk, the 3 little fellows did not dare to not drink it seriously. Similarly, their mother was watching. In fact, the 3 children didn't like to drink milk at all. In their opinion, milk was definitely not as good as spiritual fruits. But they couldn't not drink it. Boo! Mommy said that drinking more milk will make you stronger and grow up quickly. Their only wish now was to grow up quickly so that they wouldn't be tortured by their stepfather again. As the days passed, the 3 little shells grew more and more beautiful and cute. These 3 children had all inherited the good points of their parents. They were 3 little demons, and all of them were pink, tender, and toot. Most importantly, these 3 were exactly the same. So, every time they saw the 3 cute little guys appear together, everyone felt very happy. 3 months later, little babe could already walk and speak. The first person she called out to was naturally their most beloved mother, followed by great-grandfather and uncle. After that, she called out to everyone, but no one called her daddy. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue was a little unhappy. The moment the 3 little bees saw him, they didn't need their mother to say anything and took the initiative to smile at the evildoer and said, "Daddy." N. The demon nodded his head indifferently. How could he not know that these 3 little rascals were doing this on purpose? However, he didn't mind. After all, it was his own son, and he would never be able to escape from his palm. The demon was very confident. The 3 little babe were indeed no match for him now, especially when the stepfather and the biological son had a conflict. His mother was completely on the side of the stepfather. Although this fact made the 3 of them feel a little disappointed, they had no choice. He was small, so he could only endure it. It could be said that the 3 BBs, who had different personalities, were all good at enduring and had learned how to keep up appearances. Regarding this, neither Leng Ruoxue nor the demon would expose them, while Leng Qingtian and the others completely treated the father-son fight as a joke. These three little people were really too funny. By the time the three little shells were 3 months old, Leng Ruoxue and the demon had already started to teach the three of them systematic cultivation. The three little fellows all had the chaotic divine body. Among them, Rui had the dark attribute. Therefore, when he grew up, he would naturally inherit the 9 nether prison. Thus, the cultivation of Rui Zi was completely taken over by the demon, while Saint Rui and Rui Yuan were taken care of by Leng Ruoxue, Song, and Qingju. In just half a year, the three little fellows already had the strength of a spiritual emperor. Such a cultivation speed was simply astonishing. Initially, the evildoer wanted to send Rui Zi to the 9 nether prison for training, but Leng Ruoxue was reluctant to do so. After all, the child was not even 1 year old yet. If he went to the 9 nether prison now, would he be serving himself up to others? Seeing that Leng Ruoxue did not agree, the demon did not force her. However, he secretly increased the intensity of Rui's training. Once Rui showed a little dissatisfaction, the demon would tell him that when his father was your age, he had already started to manage the 9 nether prison. Of course, the little Ruizi did not quite understand what kind of place the 9 nether prison was, but it was definitely not simple. In order to surpass a certain father, Rui gritted his teeth and persevered through the devilish training. While training Rui's, evildoer's thoughts turned to Ruixing and Ruiqiao. He did not want the intensity of training for these three sons to be different. When the evildoer suggested that he would be the one to initiate all three of his sons, Leng Ruoxue agreed with a smile. She could use this opportunity to let him interact more with his sons. But Song was a little angry. Damn it. On what basis? That was its baby. The demon smiled and told Song, a loving mother will spoil her son. Leng Ruoxue had been unjustly accused. As she reflected on her actions, she really wanted to defend herself. She had not spoiled her child. Why did he have to use her as a gun? This is so sad. The sorrowful Leng Ruoxue looked gloomily at the demon, but the demon did not feel guilty at all. He only said, "You guys are definitely not as strong-willed as I am. Once the child acts coquettishly, I will let go of my supervision on them. Look, now it's clear that Ruixing and Rumin together can't even beat Rui's." All right. This was a rather sad fact. Leng Ruoxue and Song couldn't deny it. In this way, the burden of laying the foundation for the child fell on the demon. When the two children found out about this terrifying fact, their first reaction was to hug their mother's thigh and start howling. We're your sons, how can you hand us over to the devil? In the three children's hearts, their father was a demon who would fight with them for their mother and scold them. Especially after Ruixing and Ruiqiao found out about the intensity of Rui's cultivation, they were simply shocked. This was too much of a scam, wasn't it? They weren't even a year old yet. This was abuse. It definitely was. Chapter 3069. The Cute Little Kids Training 2. Unfortunately, it was no use crying. On this point, Leng Ruoxue and Song couldn't compete with the monster. The two little babies saw that crying was not going to work and their mother was not soft-hearted at all, so they had to use all kinds of means to start acting coquettishly. The two little things crawled into their mother's arms, one on the left and one on the right. He used his own saliva to wash Leng Ruoxue's face. Leng Ruoxue was helpless. She thought to herself, it's useless even if you give your mother a kiss. I really can't help you. Seeing this, the demon's face darkened as he grabbed the two brats from his wife's arms. It was fine if they kissed when they were young, but it was impossible for him to take advantage of his wife at this age. You're not allowed to kiss mommy in the future, and you can't kiss anyone of the opposite sex, understand? The evildoer said in an unusually serious tone. The two little kids were already unhappy after being taken out of their mother's arms. Now that they heard their stepfather say this, they were at a loss for a moment. So they asked dumbly, why? That's our mother. Your mother is also of the opposite sex, so you're not allowed to kiss her. The demon said seriously. Why? The two little baby shamelessly asked. A kiss will make you pregnant. The demon said with a serious expression. When Leng Ruoxue heard the demon's words, She was immediately flustered. Oh my, was it good to lie to a child like this? However, when the evildoer was educating his child, she really could not interfere. Otherwise, the father would lose his prestige in his son's heart. Therefore, she could only endure the deception of the demon to her son and silently pray in her heart. Son, good luck. Actually, it was also good not to kiss the opposite sex. As a man, I can't be too casual. Lung Ruoxue fell silent with this reason in mind. Lung Qingtian and the others, who had unintentionally heard this, did not dare to expose the mistress of the dark world's lie. The consequences would be too severe. However, the two little babe didn't know what pregnancy was at all. Therefore, their eyes were a little dazed. Seeing this, the demon continued to mislead. When you're pregnant, you'll have a baby, just like you too. So, you can't just kiss any woman, understand? If you kiss a woman you don't like, you'll have to bear the consequences. What will happen if we have a baby? Saint Rui could not help but ask. They'll fight with you for your beloved mother and your favorite things. So, I hate little kids the most. The demon deliberately said in disgust. That won't do. Mother is mine. When Rui Jin heard this, he immediately gave up and secretly decided in his heart that in the future, when he saw a woman he would definitely hide far away, to avoid making mistakes. Although Rui Sheng felt that something was wrong, he didn't want others to fight with him for his mother. It was enough to have a father and two younger brothers. Don't say more. It had to be said that these two sons had been successfully misled by the demon. At least for a long time in the future, they would not be allowed to appear around the opposite sex. The evildoer was very satisfied with his two sons' reactions. After dealing with these two little ghosts, Rui's was of course not spared. After his three sons were successfully frightened by the evildoer's happy life came. His son's daily training schedule was packed to the brim by him, so much so that he had no time to act coquettishly with his mother. As a result, his wife naturally belonged to him. In this battle for his wife, mother, the evildoer had won. When the three little babe were 1 year old, the demon directly swept the three of them out of the door. No, he arranged for the three of them to go out and gain experience. The location of the training was naturally the dark blue star. Although Leng Ruoxue was a little unhappy about this, she did not stop the demon's decision. After all, with her son's current strength, it would not be a problem for him to protect himself on planet Indigo. However, when Lung Qingtian and the others found out about the situation, they all started to blame them in their hearts. What a pair of cruel parents. The poor child was only 1 year old. 1 year old? What were 1-year-old human children doing now? After eating and sleeping, they would still be acting coquettishly with their parents and wetting the bed. But their children had all gone out to train. So, what if they encountered human traffickers? That pink, tender, and toot boy would definitely be targeted by human traffickers. Lung Ruoxue knew what they were thinking, but she wasn't too worried. If they really encountered human traffickers, they should be the ones worried. As for the three poor little ones, they weren't as pitiful as Lung Qingtian and the others had thought. As it was their first time leaving home, the three of them were extremely excited. He had finally left that demon. How could he not be happy? However, it was inconvenient for him to do anything because he was too small. When the three of them carried their backpacks and held hands on the bus, everyone's attention was immediately attracted. One of the reasons was that these three were too beautiful. Another reason was that they didn't have any adults by their side. How could they not attract attention? Immediately, someone went forward to get closer to the three. Unfortunately, the first person to step forward was defeated, because the three little ones didn't even look at him and put on an expression that kept strangers away. Needless to say, the first one to approach them was a pretty young woman. The three little ones also thought that she was a woman with ulterior motives. In the words of their stepfathers, those who were unaccountably solicitous were either evil or thieving. Especially beautiful women who approached you, they definitely had ulterior motives. A certain father had also taught them that women who took the initiative to come to their door must not be ignored. They definitely had no good intentions. It had to be said that the three of them had been taught to be crooked in the opposite sex. After their clever imagination, Women had become a synonym for troublesome and annoying. There was absolutely no good feeling for them. Therefore, it was reasonable for the woman who tried to strike up a conversation with them to fail. After the woman's failure, others came up one after another to try to get close to the three cute little fellows. Unfortunately, none of them succeeded. No matter how they smiled or took out candy, they were all despised by the three. "You bastard!" Did he think they were that easy to bribe? They were good children who couldn't be promiscuous and submit to power. Of course, they couldn't beat their father with the devil attribute now, so they had to yield in front of him. The one with the bigger fist was the boss. He had no choice but to admit defeat. This was also the biggest stain in their lives. Although only a year had passed in their lives. At the same time, the great goal they set for themselves was to defeat a certain father. He just didn't know when this wish would come true. You sang. The three of them let out cold air while their thoughts ran wild. When the onlookers saw the three identical little fellows, sometimes sad and sometimes frowning, they liked them more and more. Unfortunately, the three little ones ignored them. After a few stops, the three little bees got out of the car. The reason why they took the bus was because they wanted to experience all kinds of things that they had never tried before. So, let's start with the bus. However, after a few stops, they felt bored. It was a waste of time to take such a car. It was not even as fast as them. Fortunately, the bus did not have any intelligence and could not understand their thoughts. Otherwise, they would be depressed. This really hurt the car's heart. After experiencing the speed of the bus, the three of them didn't know where to go and walked on the road with blank faces. When the passers-by saw their expressions, they thought that they had lost their parents. Therefore, very quickly, more enthusiastic passers-by came forward to ask, and the end of those enthusiastic passers-by was no better than the people on the bus. In fact, the three little ones felt that it was quite good for them to stroll on the road, but it was too annoying that there were always people hitting on them. Although most of them had good intentions, they really didn't need it. When they were tired of walking, the three of them decided to find a place to stay. They took out their computers and found the nearest hotel. The three of them went there. However, when they arrived at a 7-star hotel, the waiter at the entrance refused to let the three of them in. Seeing this, even Rui-chan, who had the best temper, was furious. "Why can't we enter?" Rui-jin's pink little face was red with anger as he angrily asked. "That's right. Is this how you treat your guests?" Narrowing his eyes, Saint Rui said lightly. "We must go in today," Rui said coldly, and a trace of anger flashed through the dark Xing. Go play somewhere else. We're a 7-star hotel, we don't entertain children alone. If you want to come in, ask your parents to bring you in." The hotel waiter said impatiently and waved at the three of them as if they were flies. The three little rages. "You bastard!" They had been chased out by their parents to gain experience, so how could they have parents to accompany them? Moreover, although the three of them were young, they were extremely smart. They could also see that the waiter in front of them was clearly afraid that they could not afford the money. "We have money," Saint Ru, who saw through the waiter's thoughts, said lightly. "It's not good even if you have money." The waiter said. How could he believe the words of such a small child? If he really let the three of them in, the manager would blame him. Seeing that money wasn't enough, the three little heads gathered together to discuss it, then turned around and left. When the waiter saw this, he sneered in his heart. He still dared to say he was rich? And three little kids? One must know that their hotel was not something that ordinary people could afford. However, in less than half an hour, the waiter saw the three of them return. This time, the waiter didn't understand. What was he trying to do? "We want to stay at a hotel." The older brother, Saint Ray, smiled gently. "I already said no." The waiter said impatiently. "You really can't?" Saint Ray asked again. "I said no, it means no." The waiter insisted. "Don't you regret this?" Rui Z interrupted. "What do I have to regret?" The waiter didn't understand. Were these three little kids threatening him? Unfortunately, the three of them would not give him the correct answer. The three little bees looked at each other with a smile in their eyes. Then, with a wave of their hands, a ray of light flew out from their hands. With a clang, the beautiful and spacious glass door of the hotel, which was more than 2 meters high, collapsed with a loud bang. The waiter was dumbfounded. What was going on? While the waiter was petrified, the 3 little bees swaggered into the hotel. Chapter 3070. Returning a Peach, 1. At the same time, the hotel staff who heard the commotion quickly ran over. When they saw that their hotel's revolving door had been broken, they were all dumbfounded. What's going on? The hotel lobby manager asked the waiter with a dark face. The waiter finally reacted and angrily pointed at the 3 milk babies who were walking calmly not far away and shouted, "It's their doing!" Although the waiter wasn't sure what the white light he had seen was, it was a fact that the hotel door had shattered in front of him. Such a fact was enough to make him lose his job, so no matter what, he had to take someone with him, and the 3 little babies were the best candidates. However, he had forgotten that in the eyes of others, the 3 little children had just been weaned. How could they do such a thing? The hotel manager thought that the waiter knew who the culprit was, but when he saw that the waiter was pointing at the 3 children, the anger in his heart suddenly increased. You bastard! Was he trying to fool him? These 3 little kids could break the door? He would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. At this time, Rui Sheng and the other 2 also slowly turned around and innocently looked at the shocked crowd. Their beautiful little faces even had a bit of confusion. Arg! Where's the door? Suddenly, Rui's small face revealed an expression of disbelief as he asked. Don't play dumb. The door was obviously broken by you. The waiter immediately shouted when he saw that the little boy was suspicious of not admitting to it. Rui felt even more aggrieved, and raised his little meaty claws, saying aggrievedly, "Big brother, do you think I can break that door with my small arms and legs? Don't you bully a child. This is immoral." That's right. You're the one who lacks intelligence. You can't possibly think that others are the same as you, right? Saint Rui added timely. Rui Jin took out a fruit and nibbled on it, as if it was none of his business. You 3 little rascals. The waiter was so angry that he was burning with anger. It took him a long time before he could speak. The lobby manager couldn't stand it anymore and shouted, "You shut up." After shouting, he shifted his gaze to the 3 little children and asked gently, "Little guy, tell me, what are you doing here?" For these 3 children who had no adults by their side, the lobby manager expressed his goodwill very professionally. Moreover, he also felt that the waiter was a little too much. It was fine to hide the fact that the door was broken, but he actually wanted to blame it on the 3 little children. It was really preposterous. It would be a huge loss to their hotel's reputation if the adults were to find out and complain about them. Therefore, he would never allow such a thing to happen. We're here to stay. Saint Rui's pretty little face showed a trace of shyness as he replied, and then looked at the waiter with a smile that was not a smile. He dared to scold them. You're looking for death. Where are the adults in your family? The lobby manager could not help but ask. I'm at home, Saint Rui said honestly. Little friend, if you want to stay in the hotel, it's best to let your family's adults come and settle the procedures, the lobby manager said. However, when faced with the puzzled gazes of the 3 little bees, he realized that he couldn't continue to refuse. We're already adults. Uncle, don't tell me you're also disrespecting us like this, brother? Rui's clear eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of mist. Suddenly, the lobby manager didn't know what to do. Uncle doesn't look down on you, but you're still too young. The lobby manager thought for a while and said, Dad said that we've grown up and can take care of ourselves. Rui Jin, who was gnawing on a fruit, interrupted. Saint Rui and Rui's nodded in cooperation. For a moment, the lobby manager couldn't react. Uncle, we have money. Don't worry. Rui Jin saw that the other party did not speak and added, This isn't a matter of money. The lobby manager only said one sentence and then closed his mouth. In fact, he wanted to say that they were too young and should have a guardian by their side, but the 3 children had been saying that they were adults, so he couldn't say it. After thinking for a while, the lobby manager cleverly reported the problem. After the hotel general manager heard the lobby manager's report, he walked out of the office with a trace of curiosity. When he saw the three beautiful and cute little children, he couldn't help but squat down and look at them at eye level. As if he was afraid of scaring the three little bees, he asked in a low voice, "Little babies, where did you come from?" "At home." Saint Rouet repeated. Just you guys?" The general manager asked in a different way. "Yes, we are here to gain experience," Saint Rouet said seriously. Hearing this, the general manager couldn't help but chuckle. Coming out to train at such a young age? Although he felt that this was a little unbelievable, he couldn't help but like the three babies in front of him more after seeing how cute they were. He thought for a while and said, "How about this? Give me your parents' phone numbers, I'll ask for their opinion. If they agree to let you stay in our hotel, I'll let you stay. How about it?" "All right." Rui Sheng felt that the uncle in front of him was reasonable, so he agreed. However, when one of the general managers called Lung Ruox's home, before he could even ask, the evildoer who received the call said bluntly, "Let them stay in your hotel. I have no objections. May I ask who you are?" The general manager asked tentatively, but he couldn't help but mutter in his heart that he hadn't even asked anything yet. How did the other party know what he wanted to ask? "I'm the father of the three children. I was the one who sent the three of them out to gain experience." The demon admitted and hung up the phone. The general manager held the phone and was stunned for a while before he said, "Since your father has agreed, you can stay here." In fact, even if the other party had agreed, the general manager still felt that this matter was too inconceivable. After all, the child was still so young. As a parent, wasn't she worried at all? Although he had doubts in his heart, it was obvious that he had no way to figure it out at this moment. However, he still decided to take care of these three little babe. Otherwise, if something really happened, their hotel would still have to bear the responsibility. The general manager was about to go through the formalities with the three little bees. At this moment, the waiter, who saw that something was wrong, quickly shouted, "General manager, the three of them broke our hotel's door. We can't just let them go like this." Upon hearing this, the general manager turned around, glanced at the empty door frame, and then at the three people standing by his feet. He said lightly, "You're saying that they broke the door?" "That's right." The waiter thought that the general manager believed their words and quickly nodded. "Can you break the glass door?" The general manager continued to ask. "Of course I can't." The waiter replied. "Even an adult like you can't do anything, but these three little bees can break such a heavy glass door? Even if you're lying, you should have some credibility. Don't you feel embarrassed to accuse a child?" The general manager's face was full of disappointment, and then he said to the lobby manager, "Let this guy go to the human resources department and get 3 more months of salary. He doesn't need to work in the hotel anymore." Chapter 3071, Returning a Peach, 2. After he finished speaking, the general manager did not give the waiter a chance to speak and went straight to the service desk with the three little bees. After finishing the procedures, Rui Sheng took out a large pile of coins to pay. Originally, they wanted to use these coins to hit the servant, but now that the matter was easily solved, the coins were naturally not needed. So, it was only natural to use them to pay the bill. However, when they saw the largest 10 yuan coin in front of them, the staff at the front desk clearly had a conflicted expression. However, their good professionalism made them not easily show their dissatisfaction. More importantly, the general manager was still watching them. Just as the staff was about to count the coins, the general manager's eyes twitched and he said, "There's no need to count, just put the room fees for these 3 children on my account." Then he picked up the pile of coins and said to Saint Rouet, "Little guys, you should keep your pocket money. Uncle will treat you to a free stay. Uncle is a really good person." Looking at the general manager, Rui Sheng smiled in satisfaction. Originally, the 3 of them were already prepared to make a scene in the hotel, but the person in front of them was so tactful, they did not intend to make a scene. The general manager, who had received the good guy card, could only smile helplessly. After sending the 3 of them to the guest room, the general manager personally arranged some food for the little babies to eat, and then went back to work. In the evening, a certain general manager who was still worried came over to take a look personally, which also made the 3 little guys have a better impression of him. Uncle, we still don't know your name. Saint Pri, who felt that their relationship was much closer, asked. You can call me Uncle Mingchen. The general manager said with a smile. The more he looked at the three little things, the cuter they looked. He couldn't understand why their parents would be at ease letting them go out to gain experience at such a young age. They were really big-hearted parents. Uncle Mingchen, have you found an aunt for us? Saint Ray continued to ask. When Mingchen heard this, he felt his head throb. This little fellow is only 1 year old, right? A 1-year-old child knew all this? This made him unable to accept it. Uncle is not married yet, he replied seriously. Oh, it's good that you're not married. He was at ease and no one was controlling him. Just like my dad, he listens to everything our mom says. He doesn't have any freedom or status, so Uncle, don't look for a woman too early. I'll be very sullen. Saint Rui said like an adult. When Mingchen heard this, he was simply confused. Was this child in front of him really 1 year old? How did he know so much? In addition, Uncle, from your physiognomy, I can tell that there will be rotten peach flowers in the near future, which may even put your life in danger. So, you must be vigilant and don't fall into their trap. No matter how Mingchen reacted, Rui Sheng still acted like a little adult and said, Oh my. The little boy had turned into a little charlatan in an instant. Hearing Rui Sheng's words, Mingchen continued to be confused. In the end, after he promised that he would definitely not fall for it, he left in a sorry state. Once Mingchen left, Rui said helplessly, Brother, are you trying to be a busybody? This uncle has been good to us, so I'm returning the favor. Rui Sheng continued to act like a charlatan. Rizi looked at him and simply ignored him, while Rui Qiao was eating food from the beginning to the end, not thinking about this matter at all. The next day, the moment Mingchen went to work, he was pestered by Rui Sheng. Due to his brother's sudden thought of being a busybody, Rui felt helpless, while Rui Xen was willing to do anything as long as there was food to eat. Looking at the three clingy little guys, Mingchen felt very helpless. However, he really liked these three little babies, so he really couldn't bear to see the three of them disappointed. It was strange. It was not that he did not have any children at home, but he felt that none of the children at home were as cute and likable as these three little ones. Now that he saw them sticking to him, he did not think much about it and accepted them. During the day, Rui Sheng and the other two would stay in Mingchen's office. At night, they would leave work with him. Naturally, he would also pay for their 3 meals. After following Mingchen for a few days, the three of them were able to enter the house. It was said that it was Mingchen's grandfather's birthday that day and his grandfather loved children the most. Hence, the three of them were invited to the He family's grandfather's birthday banquet. The He family's grandfather's birthday banquet was held at the He family's mansion on the mountaintop. The He family had been established on the west coast for hundreds of years and could be considered a noble family on planet Indigo. Naturally, those who attended the He family's birthday banquet were all big shots with high status. It was the first time for the three of them to attend such a large-scale banquet, and they were facing strangers who they did not know. However, other than feeling curious, the three of them did not feel shy at all. Seeing them like this, Mingchen was at ease and let them play by themselves, while he went to entertain the guests. The 3 identical children quickly became the focus of everyone's attention. Some people who liked children came up to them to strike up a conversation, but the 3 little guys ignored them. Rui Jin was busy eating, while Rui was sitting on the sofa surfing the internet. Only Rui Sheng's eyes were following Mingchen. When he saw a woman approaching Mingchen, Rui Sheng immediately ran up to him and grabbed his collar, saying in a crisp voice, "Dad, who's this old lady?" As soon as Rui Sheng said this, Mingchen, who was called father, and the young woman, who was called grandmother, were all shocked. The people nearby also stopped chatting in unison and turned their surprised gazes to the 3 of them. After Mingchen came back to his senses, he was so embarrassed that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. What was this? What was this little kid trying to do? Rui Sheng, don't call me Dad. Mingchen said softly. He was not this little thing's father. Dad, did I do something wrong? Why don't you acknowledge me? Rui Sheng's clear eyes were filled with mist as he said pitifully. He had vividly portrayed an unacknowledged child, and many people could not bear to see it. Mingchen, you're in the wrong here. How can you not acknowledge your own child? A middle-aged lady said disapprovingly. For a family like theirs, they could choose not to acknowledge the mother of the child, but the child was a must. Mingchen, who had always been good-tempered, couldn't help but roll his eyes when he heard this. Was he going to be unable to clear his name even if he jumped into the Black Sea? He had picked up this kid. Auntie, don't blame Dad. He had no choice. If those old ladies who like Dad know that he has a child my age, they definitely won't be willing to be stepmothers for us. So, it's better to just treat us three brothers as non-existent. Woo, I understand, Dad. Saint Ray sobbed and whispered. Mingchen was about to go crazy. Was he that kind of person? Stepmom? If it was really his child, he would rather raise the child alone than to find a stepmother for the child. However, those women who had designs on him and were called old grandmas by Saint Ray were obviously even crazier than him. Why did he have to call them old grandmothers? Were they that old? There were many women who went crazy, but no lady from a famous family would be willing to argue with a little child in public. That would be too ungentlemanly. More importantly, they only found out today that Mingchen already had a child of this age. In this case, if one wanted to be Mrs. He's woman, they would naturally have to think twice. It could be said that what Ruisheng did made at least half of the women give up. Just when Ruisheng wanted to continue working hard, Grandpa he appeared and took a fancy to this child who might be his great-grandson. He had no choice. The little child in front of him was too cute, pink, tender, clean and beautiful. It was hard for the elders not to have a good impression of him, and the consequence of having a good impression of Ruisheng was that Grandpa he accepted this child with a wave of his hand. After hearing that he had two younger brothers, Grandpa he was even happier. When he saw the three identical pink children, the old man even felt that these three little things were the best gifts his grandson could give him. Grandpa he was happy, but Mingchen was worried. He didn't understand why the three little kids were doing this. Could it be that she was pestering him because she wanted to find herself a cheap father? Mingchen couldn't understand it, and Ruiz, who understood the entire situation, could be said to be the most depressed person besides Mingchen. How should he put it? Rui suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He could clearly feel the malicious intent from afar. However, Saint Rui didn't care about that. He was just returning the favor. As for Ruijin, it was still the same sentence. If there's food, it'll be good for you, me, and everyone. As for Grandpa he was obviously in a good mood after having these three suspected great-grandsons. He was happy the whole night and would even hug the three little guys in his arms from time to time. That night, the three little shells became the most dazzling stars of the He family's birthday party and became well known overnight. After the dinner, Grandpa he called Mingchen into his study and said helplessly, I was going to get you engaged to the young lady of the Wang family, but now that you have three children, I'm afraid she won't be willing to be a stepmother. Grandpa, I don't like that woman. Mingchen sighed and said honestly. What about the mother? What is his identity? Grandpa he heard Mingchen say this and asked again. Mingchen was a little dumbfounded. How would he know? These three children were not his at all. Forget it, there's no need to explain, I understand. You can leave first. Seeing that Mingchen seemed to be hiding something, Grandpa he said kindly. After hearing this, Mingchen wanted to go crazy again. Unfortunately, his grandfather had asked him to leave, so he could only swallow his explanation back into his stomach and leave the study room gloomily. After he left the study, Mingchen found the three little babe and asked Ruisheng with a serious face, What are you three up to? Why are you calling me daddy in front of so many people? I didn't call him that, it was Big Brother. Rui pushed the matter away very cleanly. Saint Ru, why do you think so? Mingchen called out. To help you block the rotten peach blossoms. Uncle, didn't I tell you that your recent fortune is rotten? Saint Rui said seriously. You're just a little boy. Do you know what a rotten peach is? Mingchen didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this reason. Moreover, he couldn't believe the words of a child, so he just treated it as a child being naughty and didn't take it to heart. Chapter 3072. Dad, I was wrong one. Of course I do, Uncle. I'm really doing this for your own good. Saint Rui said earnestly. Moreover, looking at He Mingchen's expression, he knew that his words had been ignored again. So, it was a pity that he had to worry about this uncle at such a young age. What a bitter life. However, he felt that this uncle was a good person and treated them well, so he was willing to help him. From little Ruisheng's point of view, it's up to you to believe it or not, and it's up to me to help or not. He had made up his mind to get involved, so no one on planet Dark Blue could stop him. Seeing that little Ruisheng was a little stubborn, He Mingchen just thought that he was a willful child. Therefore, he did not take Ruisheng's words to heart, and Ruisheng did not care at all. After Grandpa He's birthday party ended, He Mingchen wanted to send the 3 little kids back to the hotel, but Grandpa He used the excuse that his great-grandson shouldn't be wandering around outside and insisted on keeping the 3 little girls. Ruisheng was very satisfied with Grandpa He's arrangement, and with the 3 little kids' sweet mouths, they quickly coaxed old Master He to the point where he didn't know what to do. But that night, Ruisheng could not laugh anymore. As soon as they returned to the room that Grandpa He had arranged for the 3 little babies, the 3 of them saw their father and mother, who should not have appeared in the room. At first, the 3 little babies were extremely happy to see their mother, but the dark-faced father stood beside their mother like a demon, causing the 3 little boys' hearts to tremble madly. The father's entire body was emitting a cold aura that kept strangers away. So scary, so scary. The 3 little children, who were about to step toward their mother, suddenly stopped and looked at their mother pitifully, at a loss. Mommy, please protect me. However, Lung Ruoshue acted as if she didn't see the 3 babies' pleas for help. She only gave them a helpless look and turned her head away from the 3 babies. Otherwise, she was afraid that her heart would soften. The 3 children felt more and more uneasy that their request for help from their mother did not get the help they deserved. At this moment, the space in the room distorted, and a snow-white kitten appeared in the air. The 3 children's eyes lit up when they saw it. Unfortunately, the snowy white kitten only glanced at them indifferently before it drifted into Lung Ruox's arms to seek comfort and comfort. Song's heart was filled with resentment. Heartless little soul. It was a pity that he had raised them up painstakingly, but he couldn't get them to call him father. What right did that man, who had only known them for a few days, have to be the father of these 3 little devils? That Sundersong was filled with jealousy. Seeing that Uncle Tsong, who had always doted on them, also ignored them, the 3 little children suddenly felt that things were big. Because according to past practice, if their father wanted to deal with them, Uncle Tsong would help to stop him. But now, their father clearly showed that he wanted to deal with the 3 of them. Was he turning a blind eye to Uncle Tsong's actions? Uncle Tsong. The 3 little children's voices were soft and childish. Their mother couldn't be counted on, so Uncle Tsong couldn't leave them alone. The 3 children had extremely high intelligence, so they knew who would become their ally in the process of competing with their father. But now, Uncle Tsong, who had always been regarded as an ally, was obviously suspected of betraying the enemy. This was not right. Unfortunately, whether it hit or not, the 3 of them didn't have the final say. In the past, when Tsong heard the 3 little ones calling him softly, he would definitely rush to them without a care. However, now, a certain cat was jealous and full of resentment, so the 3 little ones' coquettishness ended in failure. It could be said that the current Azure was completely unmoved. Its unconcerned attitude also made the 3 little children a little more at a loss. At this time, the evildoer who had been holding back his anger for a long time grabbed Ruisheng and slapped his little butt. Then, Ruisheng burst into tears. Seeing their father's ruthlessness, the other 2 little children's small bodies couldn't help but tremble. Although their father had always been strict with them, most of the time he was just scaring them. It was really their first time to directly hit them. All this time, they had only dared to compete with their father because of the love and adoration of their mother and uncles. But now, the only 2 people in the room who doted on them were turning a blind eye to it. This was heaven's will. Following Saint Rui's bawling, Rizi and Ruiyen could not help but follow suit. Seeing this, the demon's handsome face darkened and the veins on his forehead also started to throb. Do you know why I'm going to teach you a lesson? The demon's face was cold as he questioned in an unfriendly tone. I didn't do anything wrong. Saint Rouet replied with tears in his eyes. You didn't do anything wrong? You little brat, how dare you call someone else dad? You've got guts. The demon gritted his teeth. If he wasn't afraid that his wife would be angry, he wouldn't have only punished Rouet Xing by hitting his little but a few times. That was just a temporary solution. I'm going to help that uncle get rid of the rotten peach flower. Saint Rouet sobbed as he explained, his black grape-like eyes were sparkling, and the expression on his face was really aggrieved. Do you still have a reason for this? The demon roared. Boo! Father, I was wrong. You'll always be my biological father, irreplaceable. No one can take Mother away from me. Mother will always belong to you. Saint Rouet said. He had no choice, he had to admit defeat. He was still too young to defeat his father. More importantly, if he really angered his father, even his mother would not be able to save them. Knowing this, Saint Rouet knew that nothing would happen if he provoked this black-hearted demon, but sometimes he must not lightly stroke the tiger's whiskers, otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Hearing Saint Rouet's words, Lung Ruoxue, who had turned around, could not help but laugh. Then she hugged Saint Rouet and said to the demon, All right, you've already hit him, it's time to vent your anger. After hearing this, the demon turned his head arrogantly and snorted coldly. Then he threatened the three little children fiercely, If you dare to call someone else dad again, I'll throw the three of you into the chaos world to fend for yourself. There's no one there, and when the time comes, you'll definitely be crying out for help. Hearing this, the three children shivered again. They knew the place their father was talking about and had been there once. Although they had only stayed there for a day, the three children instinctively disliked that dark place. The next moment, Ruiz and Ruixin ran towards their mother and buried their heads in her arms for protection. Lung Ruoxue carried her three sons and looked helplessly at the infuriated evildoer. She really didn't know what to say. Her sons were only 1 year old. As a father, how could you scare your children like this? What if he really scared the child into a shadow? Although her heart ached for her child, Lung Ruoxue would not interfere when the evildoer was disciplining his child. Otherwise, the father would lose his prestige in his son's heart in the future. Such a thing must not happen. Chapter 3073. Dad, I was wrong, too. However, now that the evildoer had finished scolding her son, it was naturally her turn to feel sorry for her son. As she looked at her tender eldest son, her dark, starry eyes were still filled with tears of grievance. A teardrop was still hanging on his long eyelashes. He looked so cute no matter how she looked at him. Lung Ruoxue's heart melted into a mess. Tell Mommy, why did you help that uncle? Lung Ruoxue coaxed as she looked at the three adorable soft buns. That uncle is a good person. He even let us stay in the hotel for free. He doesn't look down on us little kids at all. He sobbed and peeked at his father, who was burning with jealousy, and whispered, What? I've bribed you three. What if he has ulterior motives? Or he sees that you guys are cute and deliberately uses cannonballs to kidnap you and sell you off? Lung Ruoxue said on purpose. Hearing his mother's words, Ruixing blinked his eyes, then lowered his long eyelashes and said shyly, Mom, we're not that easy to kidnap. Moreover, Uncle Tsong said that the intuition of a little beast can't lie, and my intuition tells me that Uncle is a good person. All right. Lung Ruoxue completely believed that her son was smart. And this was the first time the three little children wanted to help someone. As a mother, she naturally couldn't hold her sons back. However, she still said cautiously, Son, as the saying goes, you must always be wary of others. Since you want to do good, I won't stop you. But the premise of doing good is to protect yourself. Otherwise, you know what I mean. Looking at his mother's smiling face, Ruixing really wanted to say, Mom, we don't understand. Only today did Ruixing realize that his mother, who was usually gentle and soft, gave him a feeling that was even scarier than his father. But no matter what, with Lung Ruoxue's approval, the three little kids could finally stay in the He family with a legitimate reason. When their mother took away their jealous father and Uncle Song, the three little babes' hearts were completely at ease. Lying on the bed, Ruth couldn't fall asleep until he sat up. He looked at his brother seriously and sighed, "Brother, Xiaoling, I just realized today that Mommy is the scariest big boss in our family." "Yup." The other two also sighed in unison. After that, the three of them looked at each other and secretly decided at the same time that they must hold on to their mother's thigh. No matter who they provoked, they could not provoke their mother. Otherwise, they would definitely end up in a very miserable state. After understanding this fact, the three little children fell asleep with uneasy hearts. In the next few days, the three of them lived in the He family like fish in water. Because they were favored by the He family's grandfather, the He family didn't dare to show any contempt because of their unknown identity. At least, the He family liked the three of them very much on the surface. However, it was not easy to please the three little kids. Basically, other than Grandpa He and He Minchin, the three of them did not care about anyone else. In addition, in order to ruin He Minchin's romantic relationship, the three little kids strongly requested to stay by He Minchin's side during the day. In the beginning, He Minchin naturally did not want to take care of the three children when he went to work. However, if he did not take the three children with him, the three little fellows would cry in front of him. He had no choice but to take the three children with him. As a result, he had no private life at all. Other than work, he had almost become a full-time stay-at-home dad, and his daily life revolved around his children. It could be said that habits were very scary. In just a few days, he had actually gotten used to this kind of life and gradually became regular. At the same time, the fact that he had three children became the gossip of the upper-class society on the west coast of planet Indigo. At the same time, his status as a diamond-class bachelor plummeted, and there were fewer women around him. After all, not every woman could bear the fact that the children of their sweetheart called them grandmother. However, there were still some brave women who were not afraid of being called grandmother and still wanted to be Mrs. He. A month later, the three of them no longer followed He Minchin to work. According to Ruixing, their cheap father, He Minchin, had fewer bad relationships, and his father was very self-aware and came home on time every day after work. Therefore, they should give He Minchin enough trust, and there was no need to follow him so closely. With the big brother Ruixing giving in, Ruizi and Ruiqiao were more than happy to do so. Just like that, the three of them returned to their lazy lives, eating and sleeping every day. One day, after a normal afternoon nap, the three of them opened their eyes and found that they were no longer in the room they were familiar with. What was going on? The three little fellows were very puzzled. After looking at each other, they shifted their gaze elsewhere. "Yo, the three little rascals are awake?" Suddenly, a mocking voice came from above the three heads. The three children raised their heads and saw a familiar face. "It's you." After searching through his memory for the identity of the face, Ruixing asked. The owner of this face was none other than the snobbish waiter they had met earlier. Were they kidnapped? When he saw the waiter, Saint Ra already had a bad feeling in his heart. However, what followed was happiness. "So excited. It looks like you still remember me." "Little rascal, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't have lost my job." Seeing that he had been recognized, Waiter Fire shouted, "You can blame us for this?" Saint Rue asked in return. He felt a little wronged. If it was not for the waiter looking down on them, why would they smash the door of the hotel in anger? Therefore, they could not be blamed for this. As for the waiter who lost his job, he didn't feel guilty at all, because this person didn't love his job and didn't have a good attitude. "If I don't blame you, then who should I blame? Little brats, I didn't expect you to be the illegitimate children of the He family. Ha! I'm going to be rich this time." The waiter's eyes glowed with green light as he spoke. He looked at the three of them as if he was looking at a treasure. "Big brother, is this person sick?" Just as the waiter was feeling a little carried away, Ruiju, who had always been silent, spoke up. "Yes, he's delusional." Saint Rue nodded. "Little brat, what did you say?" The waiter said angrily when he saw the two children discussing his illness as if there was no one else around. "You're the little brat. Your whole family is a bunch of little rascals." Rue Jean, who had been too lazy to make a sound, retorted. Hearing Rui Qiao's words, Rui Sheng and Rui Zi could not help but laugh. One must know that this younger brother of theirs did not like to talk at all, because he spent most of his time and energy on eating. Now that he suddenly knew how to scold people, how could they not be surprised? But this also showed that Rui Jin was very angry at the moment. That's right. How could Rui Jin not be angry? Originally, he was going to eat after waking up, but because there were outsiders present, he could not brazenly take out something from his storage ring to eat. As such, this bad guy who had disturbed his mood to eat naturally became his greatest enemy. Thinking up to this point, a ball of light flashed in Rui Jin's little meaty claws, and then, the waiter in front of the three little children, who was baring his fangs and brandishing his claws, was turned into a palm-sized rabbit cub. The waiter, who was totally unaware, was about to reach out to teach Rui Jin a lesson, but suddenly realized that his outstretched hand had become a short and fluffy claw, and the three little children in front of him suddenly had to look up to see them. Heavens! What was going on? The waiter was shocked and couldn't help but exclaim. However, he couldn't hear his own voice. This fact scared him so much that his face turned pale and he felt terrible. You've really become a rascal. Seeing this, Rui Sheng stretched out his little meaty claw and gently poked the little body of the rabbit in front of him, and said happily. The waiter heard these words clearly. Immediately, his heart shrank, and the facial features on his rabbit face were so anxious that they were distorted. The child's words were too terrifying. Then, he felt his ear being pulled up by someone, and his eyes happened to meet the eyes of a baby. Release me! What have you done to me? The waiter stomped his forelegs and struggled with all his might, trying to escape from the little baby's demonic claws that were holding him. Nothing much. It only turned you into a brat. Although this is something I've always wanted to do, now that my little brother has done it, I'm very unhappy. Saint Rui, who was holding the rabbit, said lightly, and then he pouted his little mouth to show his dissatisfaction. Yes, I'm not happy either. Originally, if you ran away, then so be it. We can't go to your house. But now that you've come to our door of your own accord, you can't blame us. You can just be a rabbit for the rest of your life. Ruzi, who was at the side, also threw a big rock into the well. No. I don't want to be a rabbit. The waiter, who had turned into a rabbit, roared madly. However, rabbits could not speak. At most, they would make a few squeaking sounds. The three little children, who understood the rabbit language completely, chose to turn a blind eye to this. Where did the rabbit come from? Suddenly, the door opened with a bang, and two middle-aged men walked in. I ran in from outside. Saint Rui replied obediently. It's great to have an accomplice. Saint Rui felt that the three of them could do something big. No, I didn't run in from the outside. I'm your little friend. The rabbit shouted excitedly when it saw its companion. Unfortunately, it could only make squeaking sounds. Uncle, take it and make it a dish with wine. With a shy smile, Rui Sheng handed over the struggling rabbit. Little boy, you have some self-awareness. The middle-aged man was obviously very satisfied with Saint Rui's initiative to offer the rabbit, but when the rabbit heard this, its face turned ashen. After a moment of stiffness, it continued to struggle. Don't. A demon. You are evil. Before it could finish roaring, the rabbit was knocked unconscious by the middle-aged man. Chapter 3074. Where are you running to, you bad guy? 1. Little guys, be good. Uncle promises not to mistreat you. But if you don't, Uncle can't promise. After knocking out the rabbit, a middle-aged man said to the three little babies in front of him with a slight smile. Don't worry, Uncle. We promise to be good. But, can you answer our questions? Saint Rui showed an extremely well-behaved appearance and asked in a childish voice. Speak. The middle-aged man was obviously in a good mood. Why are we here? Saint Rui asked directly. Do you still need to ask? Of course, it's because you're an eyesore to someone. The middle-aged man said lightly, not afraid that the little boy would find out about this. Who's an eyesore? Saint Rui continued to ask indifferently. The young lady of the Wang family. The middle-aged man replied, but he regretted it a little after he finished speaking. How could he expose the young lady of the Wang family? However, it was a good thing that the three in front of him were all babies and probably did not understand the meaning of his words. He was relieved when he thought about it this way. But we don't know the young lady of the Wang family. Saint Rui's little face was full of doubt. So what if we don't know each other? The three of you have already prevented Miss Wang from becoming the young madam of the He family. So, it's only natural that she wants to get rid of you. Glancing at Saint Ray, who asked the question, the middle-aged man seemed to have told him everything he knew. I see. How does Miss Wang plan to deal with us? Saint Ray asked again. A dark light flashed in his dark eyes, making the two middle-aged men mistakenly think that the little boy was afraid. But only the other two twin brothers who knew Saint Ray the best knew that the big brother was not afraid at all, but excited. The sugar daddy hasn't given any instructions yet, so you guys have to be good, understand? The middle-aged man said honestly. After he finished speaking, the two of them left the room with the unconscious rabbit in their hands. As soon as the two of them left, Rue Jean couldn't wait to take out the spirit fruit and eat it, while Rue Zi looked at his big brother helplessly and said, Big brother, didn't you say that uncle he had a peach blossom tribulation? We're the ones who are facing a tribulation. Tisk. Isn't this good? This young master is very bored. Saint Rue said indifferently. Then he closed his eyes and continued to sleep. After finding out that the three little children were missing, He Mingqian was so anxious that he was about to get angry. She heard from the servants that the three children were taking an afternoon nap. How did they suddenly disappear? The He family's grandfather and He Mingqian immediately arranged for people to look for them. However, for some reason, the news that the He family had lost their three children was leaked. At that time, the families that were close to the He family expressed their condolences and expressed that they were willing to help the He family find the three missing children. Among these families, the most active one was the Wang family. The Wang family's young miss contacted He Mingqian. He Mingqian, who originally didn't like the Wang family's young miss, saw that she was so enthusiastic and couldn't treat her coldly. Just like that, the two of them became familiar with each other. For a few days, there was no news from the three children. This made He Mingqian so anxious that his mouth was full of blisters. At this time, the young lady of the Wang family showed her understanding, gentle, and considerate side. It had to be said that Miss Wang's performance was very successful. At least in the past few days, He Mingqian's impression of her had changed a lot. He had originally thought that the Wang family's young miss was unruly and willful, a spoiled woman. However, after these days of getting along, the Wang family's young miss was as gentle and quiet as water, her bearing was graceful and noble, and her temperament was also quite elegant. In every way, it showed that she had received a good upbringing. Not only that, she would also inadvertently reveal that she liked children very much and was willing to take care of them. This made Grandpa He very satisfied with her. It could be said that in less than 10 days, the young lady of the Wang family had successfully made Grandpa He firmly stand on the position of the marriage between the two families and completely stand on her side. Furthermore, Grandpa He had even asked if he would mind if He Mingqian had a child. The Wang family's young miss answer was perfect. She said that she would treat the child of the person she liked as her own. From this, it could be seen that the acting skills of the Wang family's eldest daughter were simply the best actress. Her continuous performance made Grandpa He even more determined to let his grandson marry this generous granddaughter-in-law. One had to know that what the rich needed the most was this kind of understanding wife. However, Grandpa He did not dare to reveal his thoughts to He Mingqian. After all, finding the child was the most important thing. However, Grandpa He was very certain that based on the Wang family's young miss performance these past few days, Mingqian would not reject her again. Just as the He family was looking for the three babies all over the world, the three little people, Rue Sheng, were so free that they were about to go moldy. Rue Jean was better off, as he only ate and slept every day. However, Rue Sheng and Riz could not stand this pig-like life, so the two little people looked a little listless. Brother, why hasn't that Miss Wang come to deal with us yet? Rui couldn't help but ask as he leaned against the bed. Who knows? Saint Ray opened his eyes slightly and replied weakly. That woman is not reliable. She must have forgotten about us. Rui Jin, who was gnawing on fruit, suddenly interrupted. You've forgotten about us? Saint Ray and Rui's eyes met and they communicated silently. It was not impossible. The two brothers stared at each other for a while before saying in unison, let's go out and meet those uncles. The three children knew very well that there were two middle-aged men and a rabbit waiting to be fattened and slaughtered outside. Because the three of them were too young, the two middle-aged men did not take them seriously. The door was not locked, but the three children had always been very obedient and rarely left the room. As a result, the two adults did not take the three children seriously. Now Rui Sheng and Rui Zi were bored and naturally wanted to target the kidnappers. However, they didn't want to kill the kidnapper, so the two brothers smiled at each other and walked out of the room hand in hand. Rui Jin, who had been gnawing on the fruit, only calmly glanced at them, before focusing all his attention on the spirit fruit in his little meaty paws. Rui Sheng and Ruizi walked out of the room hand in hand and saw two middle-aged men eating dinner. They were very dissatisfied with this. He was eating big fish and meat, but he only gave the three of them milk to drink. This was really preposterous. The two of them were furious, and the consequences were very serious. When they saw them coming out, the two middle-aged men only glanced at them lightly before burying their heads in their food. The two children suppressed their anger and walked to the cage with the rabbit. At this time, the rabbit in the cage was looking at the carrot in its small bowl worriedly. Suddenly, it felt an unfriendly demonic aura. When it looked up and saw two identical little demons outside the cage, the rabbit was so scared that it almost had a heart attack. It really wanted to faint. However, he was very energetic. With a smile, Rui Sheng opened the cage and took out the rabbit that was trying to escape from him. Looking at the rabbit's frightened face, Rui Sheng suddenly became unhappy and threw the rabbit behind him. Unfortunately, the rabbit fell into the bowl of soup of two middle-aged men who were eating at the table. Chapter 3075. Where are you running, you bad guy? 2. The soup in the bowl was very full. After the rabbit fell, the soup in the bowl splashed on the two people. The soup was still a little hot, and the two people immediately jumped up in shock. Brat, what are you doing? A middle-aged man shouted with dissatisfaction. Hearing this, Saint Re blinked his eyes innocently. His beautiful little face was full of confusion. The rabbit that was thrown out like a ball fell into the big bowl of soup. After struggling to climb out of the bowl, it was kicked away by a middle-aged man again. You bastard! Since he couldn't touch these three little brats, couldn't he just vent his anger on a rabbit? In reality, the two middle-aged men naturally wanted to take care of these troublemaking brats, but these three brats were now their livelihood. Moreover, the young lady of the Wang family didn't even give the last order, so the two of them really didn't dare to do anything to these three brats. Because of this, the unlucky rabbit was the one who suffered. The rabbit that was kicked away smashed into the wall with a bang and then slid to the ground. Saint Re looked at the unconscious rabbit and complained with tears in his eyes, Uncle, how can you treat a small animal like this? Brat, get back to your room. Otherwise, you'll be the next ones to be kicked away. The middle-aged man who was accused was angry and threatened. Rui's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he said with anticipation, Uncle, you want to kick us? Or, shall we play a game of kicking? Hearing this, the two middle-aged men were stunned. Play kicking? What was the meaning of this? The two of them were unable to react. They felt that the little boy in front of them was not mentally normal. Why couldn't they understand what he was saying? Saint Ruit, who saw through their thoughts, said to Rui with a smirk, Brother, these two uncles are seriously lacking in intelligence. Let's not bother with them. Now let's start the game. Rui nodded and gave the two middle-aged men a sympathetic look. The two men did not know what was going on. Then, they saw the two little children's chubby claws gesturing in the air, and then they clearly felt a majestic force appearing in the living room. Before they could react, they felt a sharp pain in their chest, and a sweet smell seemed to surge up from their chest. The next second, the two of them were embedded in the roof. The two of them vomited blood onto the sofa in the living room. It was as if their internal organs had been shifted, and the pain was so intense that their faces turned pale and they fainted. He fainted just like that? The two brothers turned their heads and stared at each other. Obviously, neither of them had expected the other to be so weak. It had only been one move. The two kids didn't even try to hide their disappointment. AI. Human. You're really too weak. At some point, Rui Jin had also walked out of the room. He calmly looked at the two people on the roof and made an important conclusion. Up. So weak. Saint Ray and Rui sighed at the same time. What do we do now? The three brothers looked at each other in unison. I don't know. Then, the three of them asked and answered their own questions. A few hours later, the two people embedded in the roof finally woke up. But the moment they woke up, the two of them almost fainted from the pain. Oh, you've woken up pretty quickly. At this time, Rui Sheng also noticed the state of the two and put on a well-behaved expression and teased. When the two middle-aged men heard the familiar voice, their small faces immediately turned pale, and they wished they could just faint again. The memories before they fell unconscious were still so clear that they couldn't forget them even if they wanted to. The two of them were people who had been through things, but in the face of the three little children, two words appeared in their hearts at the same time: demon. These three kids were definitely demons. Otherwise, how could they have been reduced to such a state? However, after knowing that humans were very fragile, the three little children did not intend to torture them anymore. Otherwise, it would be boring if they broke the two toys. Rui Sheng felt that he was very kind, so he waved his hand and brought the two people down from the roof. However, he was not kind enough to find something to catch the two middle-aged men. Therefore, after the two people fell from the roof, they fell directly to the floor with a bang, adding injuries to their injuries. Cough cough. The two middle-aged men lay on the ground, not daring to move. Of course, the main reason was that they couldn't get up either, because just a slight movement would cause unbearable pain to them, as if 10,000 ants were drilling into their hearts. The two of you, call the people who kidnapped us and ask them how to deal with us. Really, that woman hasn't shown up for so long, she really doesn't take us seriously. Ruzu requested after admiring the two middle-aged men's unlucky looks. Hearing this almost commanding tone, the two middle-aged men were in so much pain and depression that they wanted to bang their heads against the wall. Little kid, you're so arrogant. Do your parents know you? They had never seen a hostage who had turned the tables on them. More importantly, these hostages were three babies. This had completely destroyed their three views. Generally speaking, babies of this age should be snot and bed-peeing. But what had the three of them done? The two men didn't even know how the other party attacked, and they ended up like this. At this time, although the two of them still had lingering fears and were puzzled, in order to avoid more casualties, they decided to follow the little boy's instructions and call their financial backer. After finally crawling to the phone, a middle-aged man stretched out his arm with difficulty to pick up the phone. After dialing the number, a woman's very impatient voice came from the other end of the phone. What's the matter? Miss Wang, it's been so many days. What should we do with the three kids? The middle-aged man asked as he endured the pain. Lock him up first. The instructions of the Wang family's young miss came from the other end of the phone, followed by a beeping sound. Obviously, the other side had hung up. The middle-aged man looked at the three babies carefully. After repeating the words of the Wang family's young miss, his heart became more and more uneasy. At this time, the three children's patience was running out. Call our cheap dad's phone and tell him we're here. Rui Sheng ordered. The middle-aged man did not dare to refuse. At the same time, He Mingchen, who was having a meal with the Wang family's eldest daughter, received a call from the suspected kidnappers. He stood up immediately and said nervously, "If you have any requests, just say it. Don't hurt the child." When she heard He Mingchen say this, the Wang family's young Miss Heart couldn't help but beat wildly. What did he mean? She didn't dare to think too much about it. She didn't want the rare opportunity to have dinner with He Mingchen to disappear just like that. However, He Mingchen obviously didn't have the mood to pay attention to the Wang family's eldest Miss Mood. After he hung up the phone, He Mingchen ran out of the restaurant without saying a word. The young miss of the Wang family immediately chased after him. When they caught up with He Mingchen at the parking lot, the Wang family's young miss quickly asked, "Mingchen, what's the matter?" "I'm sorry, I have news of the 3 babies. I have to go save them." As He Mingchen answered the young lady of the Wang family, he also called Grandpa He. Hearing this, the Wang family's eldest miss heart skipped a beat. A bad feeling rose in her heart. It was indeed as she had guessed, but how could it be like this? She had clearly arranged everything, hadn't she? The Wang family's young miss couldn't understand, but she still smiled and said, "I'll go with you." He Mingchen nodded and the two of them got into the car. While sitting in the car, the Wang family's young miss sent out a message without a sound. After the middle-aged man read the message, he said to the 3 babies with an embarrassed expression, "Miss Wang wants to kill you all." "Oh, then let's do as she wishes." Saint Rui smiled evilly and gave the other 2 a look. After that, the 3 mischievous children held their breath and fainted before He Mingchen arrived. Seeing this, the 2 middle-aged men blinked and blinked again. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. He was really out of breath. A few minutes later, He Mingchen barged in with his men. The people he had brought were all on high alert, but when they entered the room, they found that it was very quiet. There were no vicious kidnappers, only 2 seriously injured middle-aged men lying on the sofa and a half-dead rabbit in a coma. "Where's my son?" When he saw the 2 of them, He Mingchen immediately rushed over and grabbed the other party by the collar. In the room," a middle-aged man said. Then he coughed a few times and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. They were heavily injured and couldn't stand the other party's torment. After hearing this, He Mingchen rushed into the room. When he saw the 3 little people lying on the bed, motionless and breathless, he was a little dumbfounded. At this time, the Wang family's young miss also ran in and checked the 3 children's breathing. She said with a sorrowful face, "Mingchen, the 3 children have already passed away. Don't be too sad. My condolences. You bastard. You're the one who went, your whole family went." Suddenly, a soft voice was heard, and then Saint Rui sat up first. "Arg! The corpse has come back to life." The young miss of the Wang family, who was already feeling guilty, was so scared that her soul almost flew out of her body. She screamed and ran out. "You're the one who came back to life." Ruizi also jumped up from the bed, and jumped up to block the Wang family's young miss' path. Looking at the little boy who was standing in front of her and staring at her coldly, the Wang family's young miss suddenly felt a sense of horror as if she had nowhere to hide. It was as if she had been seen through. She didn't know why this was happening. However, it was true that the little doll in front of her made her hair stand on end. In particular, the other party's dark eyes, which were as deep as an ancient well, made the Wang family's young miss heart tremble. "Scoundrel! I will destroy you on behalf of the moon." At the same time, Rui Jin, who was no longer playing dead, saw that his 2 brothers had woken up. He also jumped off the bed and put on a stance in front of the Wang family's young miss. However, Ruikyo's words made the 2 brothers speechless. This guy definitely had the rhythm of watching too many cartoons. Chapter 3076, Strange Shuli? 1. Although the 2 brothers thought so, the 2 little people were very calm. In the few days that they were locked up here, the 2 of them had actually watched a lot of cartoons. It was said that it was the favorite leisure activity of the children in this world, and now Rui Jin was using it. Due to Rui Jin's learning and selling, the Wang family's young miss was completely stunned. Was the bad guy talking about her? No, she must have misunderstood. These 3 annoying brats would never know about her plot. It definitely wouldn't. In this regard, the Wang family's young miss was very confident. She had always thought that she was resourceful and intelligent, and would never believe that she would be seen through by 3 milk children. At the thought of this, the Wang family's young miss couldn't help but turn her head with a slightly aggrieved expression. "Mingchen, in order to find these 3 children, I've put in a lot of effort. Not only are they not grateful, but they even called me a bad person. Wu, how can I accept this?" The sadness in the Wang family's eldest young miss tone was enough to make anyone who saw it feel sad and cry, But He Mingchen didn't give her any response. At this moment He Mingchen was in a daze. He was still immersed in the shock of his 3 children's resurrection and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. How could he not be shocked? He couldn't feel the 3 children's breathing, but in the next moment, the 3 children sat up, alive and kicking. 2 of them even jumped off the bed in high spirits to flirt with the Wang family's young miss. This completely subverted his previous understanding. This kind of incident was simply on the level of paranormal in his heart. In this way, he naturally couldn't respond to the Wang family's young miss' feigned pity. However, Rui Jin, this greedy brat, had enough time to respond to Miss Wang. He took out a pink and tender peach from who knows where and took a bite before saying, "This old lady, you're pretending to be innocent. You can deceive ghosts, but you want to deceive us? Do you think we don't know that you're the one who ordered people to kidnap us? You're talking nonsense. Don't you slander me." When the Wang family's young miss heard this, she immediately exploded. Originally, when she heard the other party call her old grandma, she wanted to sew up the little rascal's mouth. Then, when she heard the other party say all the shameful things she had done, she was really shocked and angry. In comparison, calling her old grandma was nothing. "Ruijie, what did you say?" At this time, He Mingchen, who had been stunned for a long time, finally reacted and heard everything that Xiao Ruijie had said. Then he looked at the Wang family's eldest miss in disbelief, and a hint of disappointment flashed in his eyes. "This old lady is the one who planned our kidnapping." Rui Jin took a bite of the sweet and juicy peach and said honestly, "No, Mingchen, don't listen to his nonsense. How could I do such a thing? You can't trust a child's words." The young miss of the Wang family quickly said, "Children don't know how to lie. If you really didn't do it, why would he say that?" He Mingchen said without even thinking. To him, children were the most innocent and pure people in the world, and their words were the most credible. Yes, Mother said that good children should not lie. Rui Jin is definitely a kind and honest child. After hearing He Mingchen's words, Rui Chen nodded his head heavily. He Mingchen also agreed with this, so he immediately looked at the Wang family's young miss with an unfriendly gaze. At this moment, the Wang family's young miss was completely blinded by jealousy and shouted angrily, "What, mother? I should be your mother. Tisk. If you want to be our mother, you'll have to ask for my father's permission first." Saint Rui interjected with a bad joke. "That's right, my dad has high standards, he won't fall for you." Rui also chimed in with a smile. Upon hearing this, the Wang family's eldest young miss suddenly became anxious and shouted at He Mingchen, "Mingchen, I want you to marry me immediately." "Impossible." He Mingchen rejected her flatly. He would not marry a woman who would harm children. Although he did not have much evidence so far, he believed that these 3 children would not lie to him. "Why is it impossible? I love you so much and I've done so many things for you." The rejected young miss of the Wang family roared in disbelief. She was clearly a little possessed, and the look in her eyes was extremely crazy. "I don't want a vicious woman." He Mingchen said directly. "Yes, that's right. You can't marry a poison scorpion." Saint Rui clapped his hands and said. Upon hearing this, the Wang family's young miss was disappointed. Suddenly, she took out a dagger from her small bag and pressed it against He Mingchen's neck with lightning speed. "He Mingchen, are you willing to marry me or not?" Wow! This old grandma is angry from embarrassment. Seeing this scene, Rui Jin even forgot to eat the peach and gloated. "I must." Rui Zi agreed seriously. "That's normal. Even a desperate dog would jump over a wall." Saint Rui also said, "He Mingchen, did these 3 brats have to be so happy?" The 3 brats watched helplessly as He Mingchen was threatened with a knife, but they were still gloating at the side. They even thought that this was normal. At this moment, the people who had been interrogating the 2 middle-aged men in the living room suddenly realized that the mastermind behind this was the Wang family's young miss after hearing from the prisoners. The Wang family's young miss was in the room at this moment. "This is terrible." Sensing the danger, they immediately rushed into the room and just happened to see the young miss of the Wang family holding a knife to He Mingchen's neck. He Mingchen's subordinate immediately shouted, "Wang Meifan, let go of my young master." The young lady of the Wang family was named Wang Meifan. Her subordinates had originally respected her, but now they no longer had the mood to respect this proud young lady. He was scared to death. If anything happened to his young master, he wouldn't have to return to the He family. "All right, I can let him go as long as he marries me." Wang Meifan stated her conditions. The subordinate was in a difficult position. He looked at He Mingchen's dark face and carefully called out, "Young master?" According to his subordinate, he might as well agree to save the young master's life and then slowly deal with Wang Meifan. However, He Mingchen was a tough man. He was not willing to be forced by Wang Meifan to submit, so he immediately said coldly, "You want me to marry you? Dream on." Oh, Uncle, he is mighty." Hearing this, Saint Ray clapped his hands happily. He Mingchen felt even more helpless. He couldn't help but think that this was probably the peach blossom tribulation that Ruisheng had mentioned. Although he was already very careful, he still committed the peach blossom tribulation. Not only that, but he also implicated the 3 cute little people. He felt extremely guilty, but fortunately, the 3 little children were not hurt at all. Otherwise, he really didn't know how to explain to their parents. When the subordinate heard Saint Ruiz shouting, he felt his head was about to explode. However, he could not lose his temper at a little kid, so he could only coax him, "My little ancestor, the young master is in danger. Can we not provoke the criminal? That knife is very sharp." Chapter 3077, Strange Shuli? 2. Hearing that a subordinate had treated Wang Meifan as a criminal, the 3 little kids couldn't help but laugh. Wang Meifan was so angry that her beautiful face was distorted. "Uncle, you're provoking the criminal by saying that. Look, the criminal's face is green. He looks like a green-haired monster." Ruijeng said in a childish voice. The subordinate turned around and saw that it was true. Immediately, he didn't dare to say anything, lest he provoke the criminal. At the same time, Old Master he had received the news that his grandson was held hostage by Wang Meifan. When he first heard the news, Old Master he couldn't believe his ears. Did he hear it wrong? How could his own grandson be held hostage by the young lady of the Wang family? This didn't make sense. However, there was no time for him to find out the truth. The next moment, he had no choice but to follow a large number of law enforcement officers to the crime site. As the grandfather who was being held hostage, Old Master he walked into the room and saw the sharp knife in Wang Meifan's hand against his grandson's neck. He immediately broke out in a cold sweat. If Wang Meifan's hand trembled, his grandson would lose his life. "Wang Meifan, what are you trying to do?" After a while, Old Master he calmed himself down and asked angrily, "I want He Mingchen to marry me." Wang Meifan said honestly, "If you want Mingchen to marry you, you have to put down the knife first. What's going on?" Old Master he had a headache. Wang Meifan was usually quite normal, why was she so silly? At this time, Old Master he already knew that Wang Meifan was the mastermind behind the kidnapping. Although he hated her for kidnapping his 3 lovely great-grandsons at this moment, his grandsons were also in her hands, so not only could he not get angry, but he also had to calm down, afraid that the other party would lose his grandson's life if he got angry. "It's all Ming Chen's fault for not marrying me," Wang Meifan said angrily. "Meifan, don't worry, I have the final say in the He family. If I say that Ming Chen will marry you, then you will. So, can you let him go first? If he's injured, there won't be a groom at the wedding." Old Master he coaxed. "You have the final say? If what you said was the truth, I would have become the madam of the He family a long time ago." When Wang Meifan heard this, not only did she not believe it, but she also said sarcastically, "That was then and this is now." Old Master he said with slight embarrassment, "But I don't believe you." Wang Meifan was not moved at all. "Then what will it take for you to believe this old man's words?" Old Master he was going crazy. "Call the priest over to witness our marriage now." Wang Meifan said, "Don't even think about it, Grandpa, don't agree to her request. Our He family can't have this vicious woman." When he Mingchen heard this, he quickly rejected it loudly. You brats, shut up. I have the final say in this matter. Old master, he gave he Mingchen a warning look and pretended to be angry. Great-grandfather, why are you still hiring a priest? There are ready-made ones. Suddenly, Saint Ray, who had seen enough of the show, said, What? Old grandpa, he was stunned, not understanding what this little thing meant. It's far away on the horizon, but it's right in front of my eyes. I'll just be their witness. Saint Ray said with a smile. Saint Ray, stop it. Old master, he was getting more and more frustrated. This little thing was still causing trouble at a time like this. Great-grandfather, I'm serious. Saint Ray suddenly said with a holy look. Everyone was collectively dumbfounded. What the hell was this? Please don't mess around. Wang Meifan was burning with anger and shouted, Deal with these 3 little bastards first. I don't want to see them again. You're the little bastard, your whole family are little bastards. Hearing Wang Meifan scold the 3 brothers, Rui Jin couldn't take it. Rui Xiao, calm down. Saint Rui smiled and comforted her. Then he said to Wang Meifan, Old lady, the only people who can deal with us in this world are our parents. Who do you think you are? You dare to deal with us? Aren't you afraid of spraining your tongue? Originally, I still wanted to fulfill your last wish before you went to prison, but now I've changed my mind. If I want to marry Uncle He, it's impossible for me to do so in this lifetime. Not only that, you'll be reduced to a little bastard for all your lives. Ruiz, I'll leave it to you. Rizzi, who received Saint Rui's gaze, understood, and a dark mark was inserted into Wang Meifan's body in front of everyone. In an instant, Wang Meifan shouted in shock, What did you do to me? Wang Meifan, who clearly felt a slight chill in her body, suddenly felt fear in her heart. Although she didn't know what had happened, she knew that the little bastard in front of her must have done something to her body. Old Master He Mingchen, and the others also saw the scene just now. Suddenly, a sense of fantasy rose in their hearts, and they were completely stunned. After that, Rui Jin, who had finally finished eating the entire peach, casually threw the peach pit in his hand, and it hit Wang Meifan's head. The sudden force caused Wang Meifan to fall to the ground, and He Mingchen regained his freedom. He Mingchen, who felt that he had just escaped death and was not forced to marry a wife, could finally heave a sigh of relief. In this day and age, women were really too scary. After this incident, He Mingchen, who already had a shadow over women in his heart, would probably have to keep a respectful distance from women for a short period of time. However, He Mingchen was still very grateful to his 3 little saviors. He carried the 3 children in one go, and He Mingchen felt a lot more at ease. Ruisheng patted He Mingchen's shoulder consolingly. Uncle He, don't worry. Your peach blossom tribulation has been resolved. Thank you. He Mingchen was touched. Little guys, why are you calling me uncle? You should call me daddy. Seeing that his grandson and 3 great-grandchildren were safe and sound, Old Master He was in the mood to joke. Great-grandfather, we should be calling him uncle. Ruisheng blinked his dark and bright eyes. If he called He Mingchen dad, their biological father would be furious. Yes, calling Uncle He dad is just a temporary measure. You can't take it seriously. Rizzi explained. It's all because of Uncle He's love affair. Uncle He is a good person, so we want to help him. Great-grandfather, don't randomly match couples in the future, or something will happen. The foodie Rexen said a few words of heartfelt sincerity, which was rare. But Old Master He was disappointed after hearing this. He confirmed, Mingchen, you really didn't give birth to the 3 of them? No. He Mingchen felt extremely helpless. If he really had 3 such weird sons, he would definitely go crazy with joy. Unfortunately, there was none. Old Master He was also extremely disappointed. The great-grandson that was within his grasp had flown away just like that. After dealing with Wang Meifan's matter and returning home, Old Master He couldn't accept it no matter how he thought about it. In addition, the 3 children were extremely mysterious and full of fantasy, so he really didn't want to give up just like that. After careful consideration, he decided to acknowledge these 3 little children as his great-grandchildren. After she told He Mingchen her thoughts, He Mingchen rejected her. From He Mingchen's point of view, the three children were very mysterious. Their origins were definitely not ordinary, and they were not people they could get close to. Therefore, in order not to provoke the people behind the three children, he could only advise his grandfather to give up on this idea. He also asked everyone to keep their mouths shut about some mysterious things and pretend that they knew nothing. The facts proved that He Mingchen's decision was completely correct. With his demonic temperament, he would naturally not allow any mortal to have any ideas about his own child, no matter if it was good or evil. One had to know that it didn't matter how much of a ruckus his own child wanted to play with, but this kind of tolerance wasn't limited to others. After the three children had removed He Mingchen's peach blossom tribulation, they chose to leave. After all, they still had many places that they had not gone to, and they had been here for a long time. Therefore, they could not stay here any longer. Their next destination was chosen completely according to the foodie Rui Wan's idea. It was the eastern shore of planet Indigo. It was said that there was delicious food everywhere, so Rui Wan wanted to try it. There were two options to go to the east coast. One was to take a plane, and the other was to take a boat. Airplane and the other two were not very interested. To them, the speed of an airplane was definitely not as fast as the flying beast that was sulking in their beast pet dimension. Therefore, the three of them were more inclined to take a boat. He Mingchen bought first-class tickets for the three children and personally sent them to the ship. After he told the captain to take care of them, he left the three children with tears in his eyes. The three children naturally did not feel as sad as He Mingchen. In reality, they were extremely excited. This was the journey at sea that they had been looking forward to for a long time. It came so quickly. Full of anticipation, the three little children lay on the deck chairs on the deck and basked in the sun after the ship set sail. Their carefree appearance made many onlookers who were also basking in the sun laugh. The three little people were wearing sunglasses and a pair of shorts. Their fair skin was shining with a pink luster. They looked very fresh and delicious, and also very delicate and cute. No one had ever seen such cute little guys before, and they couldn't help but take a few more looks. Old ancestor, there are three little babies over there. They're so cute. Suddenly, a sweet voice was heard. Then, a beautiful girl ran up the stairs from the end of the deck. The three children were simply too dazzling. The young girl saw them at a glance. The middle-aged man who came up later followed the young girl's gaze and looked at the three children. His pupils suddenly shrank and he said, "It's very cute." His aptitude was even better. Just by looking at the height of the three children, they were at least 3 years old. They were tall and beautiful, and they were definitely the best candidates to cultivate their sex cultivation technique. Thinking of this, the middle-aged man stepped forward and said, "Little boy, where are your parents?" Strange Shuli? Ruyu raised his head and spoke the thoughts of the three brothers. Chapter 3078, Entanglement 1. When the middle-aged man heard this, his originally smiling face darkened, and the muscles on half of his face twitched violently. Then he patiently coaxed, "Little doll, uncle isn't a strange Shuli." When Ruyu heard this, he very seriously observed the other party for a while, and then nodded his head cautiously. "You're already an old cucumber, yet you're still pretending to be young." When the middle-aged man heard this, his face completely darkened. He couldn't help but feel disgusted in his heart. This little brat was really not cute. Why was his mouth so vicious? I really don't know which family's brat he is. Why aren't his parents taking care of him? He admitted that he was not young anymore, but he was not pretending to be young. She was young to begin with. The middle-aged man thought to himself. Second brother, that's called painting an old cucumber green. You didn't study hard and didn't even know this idiom. At this time, Rui Jin, who was gnawing on a fruit, suddenly said. The middle-aged man was even more depressed. Why didn't he know that painting old cucumbers green was also an idiom? However, he also discovered that these two brats' mouths were as poisonous as the others. As for the only one who was pretending to be silent and looking at him with a smile, although he had not said anything, The middle-aged man did not dare to hope that he would hear something nice from the other party. As expected, it was Saint Rui's turn to speak. He smiled and said, "You two rascals, who allowed you to talk to strangers? Don't you know that the other party might kidnap us? We're so cute, so we're the perfect targets for those bad guys. Big Brother's teaching is right." When Rui Zi and Rui Qiao heard this, they quickly said in unison. The middle-aged man was secretly sulking. How were these two devilish children? There were clearly 3 of them. It was 3. None of the 3 disobedient children were kind-hearted. They were all black-hearted little demons. The middle-aged man was furious. He had only been hitting on her. He was really hitting on her. Why did these 3 disobedient children think he was a bad guy? Who was that? Were your parents? Let's have a good talk. The indignant middle-aged man's face turned black, then green, then white, like a palette of dark and gloomy colors. The onlookers couldn't help but sigh. They didn't try to strike up a conversation with the 3 children, or they would probably be treated the same way. From this, it could be seen that the 3 children's vigilance was not ordinary. Of course, they mainly didn't think that the child's parents would not be around. If there was a misunderstanding and the parents thought that they were abductors, they would be looking for trouble. In just a few minutes, the onlookers had made up their minds not to care about these 3 milk babies. After the 3 children said that, they turned their heads away and no longer looked at the middle-aged man who was sulking. The gorgeous girl saw that the old ancestor had suffered a loss at the hands of the 3 little children, so she wanted to perform well and regain some face for the old ancestor. Therefore, the next moment she ran to the 3rd little child and said with a smile, "Little brother, my ancestor is not a bad person. You can't treat him like this." "Then how should we treat him?" Saint Ray blinked his eyes and asked curiously. "You have to respect him, he's your elder." The gorgeous young lady saw that there was a chance and quickly said, "Whose elder is he?" Saint Ray asked in confusion. "Who knows? Anyway, it's not mine." Rui said calmly, a hint of ridicule flashing in his dark eyes. Nowadays, there were always people who liked to pretend to be elders to gain respect. He was really annoying. "Ah." The gorgeous girl was stunned for a moment before she responded, "No matter which family you belong to, shouldn't you respect those who are older than you? According to what you said, there are too many people that we have to respect. Wouldn't we die of exhaustion?" Rui said a little impatiently. Although he was only 1 year old, his IQ was by no means the same as a 1-year-old child. He had always hated people who wanted to point fingers just because they were older, damn it. Did he really think he was a dish? He was just a passerby. You can't understand it that way. Didn't your parents teach you to respect the elderly? The gorgeous girl obviously didn't hear Rui's impatience and wanted to turn the little child in front of her around. In her opinion, this little child was not respectful to the elderly because he had been raised wrongly. While he was still young, she couldn't let them be so rude. "We've always respected the elderly. More importantly, our parents have always warned us not to talk to strangers, especially strangers with other purposes." Rui said calmly. "We don't have any purpose, and we're not Grandmother Wolf. We just simply thought you were cute and wanted to get to know you." The gorgeous young woman hurriedly said. "But we don't want to know you." Rui was very honest. The gorgeous girl almost went crazy after hearing this. This little boy was really not cute. "Yes, we're so cute. You obviously have ulterior motives for wanting to get to know us. The possibility of you trying to kidnap us is 80%. As for the other 20%, I'm sure you don't have good intentions either. In this day and age, no one will be good to you for no reason, unless it's their own parents." Seeing that the gorgeous young lady had nothing to say, Rui Jin, who was gnawing on a fruit, interrupted. "Little Inying has grown up." Saint Rui touched Rui Qiao's head and sighed, as if he was saying, "My son is growing up," and this thought of his made many people laugh. Who wouldn't be amused when they saw a little kid praising another little kid in the tone of an elder? In particular, the little child who was praised raised his head arrogantly as if he was responding to his brother's words, which made him even more amused. However, at this moment, both the middle-aged man and the gorgeous young lady were extremely depressed. The two of them could be considered to have seen a lot, but today, because of the three milk children, their minds were tormented. Such an experience was really rare. Unfortunately, no matter what they thought in their hearts, it had nothing to do with the three. After they had enough of the sun, the three directly went back to the cabin to rest. Dinner was personally delivered to the three of them by the captain. The captain received He Mingchen's generous tip, so he naturally had to take good care of these three little children who were traveling alone. The captain was also aware of what had happened on the deck. However, seeing that the old and the young did not seem to be hostile to the third child, he did not interfere. The next day, the three children met a middle-aged man and a gorgeous girl on the deck. The middle-aged man thought that they were familiar with each other after yesterday's encounter, so he naturally waved at the three little fellows to greet them. However, the three of them walked past the middle-aged man and the gorgeous girl, completely ignoring them. The middle-aged man was extremely depressed. He was certain that the three devilish children were doing this on purpose. However, he felt that the third baby had a character and was a promising talent. Therefore, he was more concerned about the third baby. The gorgeous girl saw that the old ancestor was very interested in the third child. In order to please the old ancestor, she came up with an idea. Since the old forefather likes them so much, why don't we just take them away? Chapter 3079, Entanglement 2. Then aren't we really bad guys? The middle-aged man glared at the gorgeous girl and said unhappily, "How can old forefather think like this? Aren't we doing this for their own good? More importantly, it's the third child's good fortune to be able to join our sect. In the future, they'll be above the rest. By then, their parents will be grateful to us. After all, we've provided them with an opportunity to come into contact with our circle." The gorgeous young lady said with extreme pride. It had to be said that the gorgeous young lady's words moved the middle-aged man, but when he turned back to look at the three milk babies, he quickly retracted his thoughts. Looking at the temperament of these three, they didn't seem like children from ordinary families. If the other party's background was too big, it would cause trouble for their sect, and it would not be worth it. I think it's better to get their parents' approval. The middle-aged man said cautiously. Old ancestor, how could their parents possibly disagree? So what if the third child was from a top-rich family? They should be grateful to us. Besides, if they perform well, we can totally take these three children's families as subsidiary families. You know, this is a supreme glory for them. The gorgeous young lady said confidently. Although the middle-aged man felt that the young girl's words made sense, he still felt that it was inappropriate. After all, he really liked these three children. Thus, after thinking about it seriously, he still rejected the young girl's suggestion. When the young girl saw that the old ancestor did not take her opinion, she was naturally angry. She also did not have a good impression of the three little children. However, the young girl had other ideas in her mind, and she was secretly calculating the feasibility of this matter. However, the three little children did not know what the girl was thinking. They were so happy on the boat that they almost forgot about home. After nearly a week of sailing, they finally arrived at the eastern shore of planet Indigo. Before disembarking, Ruexen first went online to search for delicacies from all over the world, and then persistently moved towards her goal. The internet said that the seafood in an island city on the east coast was very fresh and delicious. After getting off the boat, Ruejin pulled her two brothers and took another plane to the city. By right, Ruejin had eaten a lot of seafood, but he was still very interested in seafood. Especially the large lobsters, he would never get tired of them. When they arrived at the city, they found the most famous seafood restaurant there and went straight in. Although there were no waiters to stop them from entering, when they were ordering, the waiter asked, "Little friend, where are your parents?" The waiter had never seen such a young child go down to the restaurant alone. Moreover, he was afraid that the three children would not have the money to pay the bill. "My parents are at home. Auntie, can we order now?" Saint Rue said honestly, his eyes flashing with impatience. He couldn't understand at all why people would ask him this question everywhere he went. Could it be that children couldn't come out without their parents? Isn't that child a little too deprived of freedom? What about the right to have children? You can't look down on children like this. They wanted freedom. They wanted equality. Of course, only children like Rui Xing would have such thoughts. After all, ordinary children would not have the courage to wander around the streets at the age of 1. They would definitely be targeted and kidnapped by bad guys. As for the 3 of them, whoever dared to kidnap them would be the unlucky one. Although her parents were not by her side, they were monitoring her through the light screen. As long as the child was not in danger, both Leng Ruoxue and the demon would not make a move. Why did you let the child out? Didn't he just want the 3 of them to experience a different environment? However, the waiter would never understand the thoughts of Leng Ruoxue and the demon. She was also in a dilemma because she had been called auntie. She was only 20. How did she become an auntie? Looking at the child who was in a hurry to order, the waiter corrected him. Little kids, you can call me big sister, but don't call me auntie. Big sister isn't that old. But we all call those who are slightly older than you, grandma, Saint Ray said with a slightly aggrieved tone. The waiter knelt down after hearing that. So he was taking advantage of her by calling her auntie. Taking a deep breath, the waitress told herself to stay calm and not to argue with a kid. Then she said, "Little friend, you have to pay for the food here." "I know. This isn't a relief center, how can we not charge them?" Saint Rouet replied naturally and looked at the waiter with a little sympathy. Why did this shop find a fool to be a waiter? Everyone knows that it's natural to pay for a meal, right? The waiter almost vomited blood. This little boy looked cute, but why did the words he said sound so uncute? Actually, what she wanted to ask was, "Do you have money?" On the other hand, Rouet Jean was more understanding. He took out a bunch of coins and said, "Auntie, don't worry. We have money." The currency on the planet was universal, so the change they had exchanged in the West Coast could finally be put to use. The waitress' mouth twitched even more when she saw the coins, but she still said, "This is not enough." "Not enough? Don't be afraid, I still have more." After saying that, Rui Qiao poured out all the coins in her bag, and they filled the table, almost forming a small mountain. "I'm not afraid." The waiter was silent. He looked at the coins on the table and was speechless. Whose brat was this? Can the parents take it away? Obviously, he could not. He'll pay for the 3 children. Just as the waitress was worrying, a heavenly voice suddenly rang out. At least, in the waitress' eyes, the voice was simply too beautiful, so she quickly turned her head. When she saw a middle-aged man and a gorgeous girl, the waitress was satisfied. Regardless of the relationship between the other party and the 3 devilish children, it was good that someone was willing to pay. Most importantly, the other party was an adult. However, Rui Sheng, Ruzi and Ruiyan only saw a middle-aged man and a beautiful young lady, and were obviously unhappy. This was definitely not a chance encounter. The 3 of them were being followed by the bad guy. "Auntie, they're human traffickers. They want to abduct us." Blinking his eyes, Rui revealed a fearful expression as he reminded, "Arg, it can't be." Upon hearing this, the waiter was stunned. Human traffickers were so rampant now? He dared to come to the restaurant? And in front of everyone? However, looking at the 3 children's beautiful appearance, it was possible that they were the human traffickers' targets. With that thought in mind, the waiter's gaze on the middle-aged man and the gorgeous girl immediately became unfriendly. In addition to the waiter, the customers who were eating in the restaurant heard Rui's crisp words and immediately looked at the 2 people vigilantly. Someone even loudly reminded, "Little boy, quickly call the police." "Right. Call the police. Quickly make the call." The waiter reacted and was about to run to the service desk. When the middle-aged man saw that the misunderstanding was big, he immediately became anxious and explained loudly, "Everyone, don't misunderstand. We are not human traffickers. We know these 3 children." After saying this, the middle-aged man was about to break out in a cold sweat. He had lived for so many years, but he had never lost so much face. It was all thanks to these 3 brats. However, seeing that these 3 were so clever and knew how to use public opinion, he was still very happy. It was just that he had embarrassed himself. When the waiter heard the middle-aged man's words, he could not help but hesitate. "Auntie, we don't even know them." When Saint Rui saw it, he quickly said, "I'll call the police." The waiter was helpless. It was better to let the police handle this kind of thing. Who asked her to be a law-abiding good citizen? On the right path. Saint Rui clenched his little fist and was satisfied. However, the gorgeous girl was not satisfied. She hurriedly went forward to stop the waiter and shouted, "What police? If you dare to call the police, I'll make sure your shop can't continue operating." Faced with the gorgeous girl's threat, the waiter's heart trembled, but she still bravely met the gorgeous girl's eyes and loudly said, "You want to threaten me? You guys are really not good people." The gorgeous girl was so angry that her eyes were full of stars. Then she rushed to the front of the three children and shouted, "Quickly tell this stupid woman that we're together. Old lady, are you threatening us too?" Rui Xing blinked his innocent black eyes and asked with a face full of fear. "Old grandma." The gorgeous girl was about to go crazy from anger, but the waiter was secretly happy. The little boy's words were true. He really called another woman grandmother. "You three little bastards." The gorgeous girl was about to go crazy. Children were indeed not cute. Even if the little boy in front of her was extremely cute on the outside, he was still a little devil in his bones. "Come back." Afraid that the gorgeous girl would cause trouble, the middle-aged man quickly spoke. "Ancestor." The gorgeous young woman was very unwilling, but she still obediently returned to the middle-aged man's side. At the same time, the middle-aged man apologetically explained to the waiter and the diners in the shop about the dispute between them and the three children. He also very sincerely stated that he only wanted to take the three children as his disciples, which was why he was chasing them and not some human traffickers. After explaining, the middle-aged man even showed off his strength. Seeing this, everyone in the shop, including the waiters, did not dare to get involved in the entanglement between the two sides. As for calling the police, in this world, although ancient martial arts powerhouses rarely appeared in front of ordinary people, people were not completely ignorant of those powerhouses with extraordinary martial arts. Moreover, this world greatly worshipped the strong. Therefore, the moment the middle-aged man revealed his strength, he immediately received countless eager gazes. To be able to be noticed by an ancient martial arts powerhouse was definitely a great honor to the ordinary people. For a moment, many envious gazes were cast on the three little children at the same time. At this time, no one dared to suspect that the old and young were human traffickers. After all, how could an expert do such a despicable thing? But unfortunately, no matter how envious the others were, the three milk babies were not moved. Seeing that the situation had been reversed, Saint Rui was not angry and said calmly, "Can we order now? We're so hungry." Chapter 3080, Helping Others, 1. Hearing this, the waiter quickly brought the menu over. Rui Xing didn't even look at the menu and directly said, "I'll have 3 lobsters first. I want the biggest one." The waiter's mouth twitched and he couldn't help but say, "Can you guys eat lobster? How about a cup of coconut juice?" From the waiter's point of view, lobster should not be suitable for such a young child. Lobster porridge was fine. Of course, coconut juice was similar to milk, so it should be the most suitable for a child to drink, right? But obviously, Saint Rui was very angry after hearing this. The other party was clearly disrespecting the little boy. This was preposterous. Did he think they were easy to bully? Saint Rui was very angry, and the consequences were very serious. Then, he put on a holy look and said to the waiter, "Grandma, can you fill your stomach with only coconut juice? Then what's the point of opening a seafood restaurant? Let's change it to juice." It was convenient and the production cost was cheap. As far as the eye could see, the streets of the city were filled with tropical coconut trees. They were ready-made raw materials. However, your coconut juice is a little too expensive. It's too black. Black is dead. When Rui Xing said this, he also glanced at the picture of coconut juice on the wall of the restaurant, on which the price was clearly written, 100. His words made the waiter feel depressed again. First of all, she didn't know why the child's attitude towards her had changed so suddenly. He had called her auntie before, but now he was calling her grandma. So, how could he let her live? Besides, the drinks in the seafood restaurant were not cheap. Although their seafood restaurant was slightly more expensive than others, they were still the most famous seafood restaurant in the area. The hotel itself was of a different class, so how could it be compared to the roadside stalls? Secondly, the waiter also felt a sense of malice from the way the child called her grandma. It seemed that he was taking his anger out on her. After thinking about it carefully, the waiter felt that he had not done anything that he should not have done to offend this little boy. How did it end up like this? Although the waiter's senses were very sharp, he could not understand why. In fact, Rui Xing was indeed angry, mainly because he saw that the waiter's treatment of the middle-aged man and the gorgeous girl was too different, which made the narrow-minded and vengeful Rui Xing very unhappy. You bastard! What happened to the alliance? How could his stance be so unstable? Wasn't the other party just an ancient martial arts expert? As for the people in the shop, they were all showing him respect as if he was a rare animal. They were still gods. If these people knew their identities, wouldn't they all kneel down and worship them? Saint Rui looked down on the people around him, who took advantage of the situation and decided to give them a hard time. The waiter became the first person to eat the crab. The waiter was inexplicably ostracized and felt wronged. However, out of good professional quality, he knew that the little boy in front of him was not interested in drinks, so he still went to prepare the big lobsters for them. The customer was God. Even if the guests were only 3 little children, it would be the same. Half an hour later, the waiter brought out the freshly baked lobsters, which were red from the processing, and placed them on the table of the 3 children. Looking at the big lobster that was still steaming and had the unique smell of seawater, Rui Xing suddenly frowned and looked up at the waiter, his face full of doubt. "This is the biggest lobster in your restaurant? You're not trying to fool me, right?" The waiter was silent. He looked at the lobster that was the size of the baby's arm and didn't know what made the baby unhappy. These 3 lobsters were indeed the biggest and best in their store. He didn't deceive customers just because the other party was a little boy. However, Saint Rui was not satisfied, and even said with a face of disgust, "So small. It definitely won't taste good. Little friend, the lobsters in our restaurant are definitely the best. Every one of them is alive and kicking, and the taste is also first class. You'll know when you try it." The waiter advised patiently. "I don't need to taste it to know that the lobsters here are definitely not deep-sea lobsters. If I'm not wrong, you must have caught them in the shallow waters. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so small and taste so bad." Saint Rui wrinkled his little nose and said. In short, he was disgusted. After the waiter heard what Rui Xing said, he was so angry that he wanted to curse. Deep sea? Who would go to the deep sea to catch lobsters? All kinds of situations could happen in the deep sea, and it was not something that ordinary people could go down. "Do you think you have a swimming pool?" After taking a deep breath, the waiter told himself not to argue with a little boy. He was still young. After giving herself a few counseling sessions, she said, "Little friend, the seafood sold in all the major hotels and seafood markets on the entire planet Indigo, other than some fish caught in the deep sea, the rest of the seafood, including lobsters, are all shallow sea." "I see. Why not go to the deep sea? The lobsters in the deep sea are all fat, strong, juicy, and extremely delicious." As Saint Rui spoke, he even smacked his lips on purpose, as if he was reminiscing. The waiter could only complain when he heard that. Lobsters and fish in the deep sea were different. Fish could be caught with a net, but could lobsters be caught? Lobsters didn't come out in groups. They had to be caught manually one by one. If they really encountered a big one, it would be hard to tell who would catch who. From this, it could be seen that the risk of catching lobsters in the deep sea was too high. Unless it was an ancient martial arts expert. Wait a minute. Wasn't there an ancient martial arts expert right here? The waiter subconsciously looked at the middle-aged man, but he did not dare to say anything and looked away. The middle-aged man immediately understood and even gave the waiter an appreciative look. This little guy is not bad. They were giving him a chance to perform. The middle-aged man, who felt good about himself, immediately walked over and said to the 3 of them, "Little guys, since you want to eat deep-sea lobsters, how about I go and catch some for you?" This is good. Saint Rouet agreed. Just wait. The middle-aged man was overjoyed when he heard this. He pulled Juan and walked to the nearest beach around the hotel. Seeing that the eyesore had left, Rouet blinked and asked Ray Sheng, "Big brother, what do we do now?" "What do you mean?" "It won't taste good when it's cold." Saint Ray pointed at the steamed lobster on the table and said, "Didn't we capture that weird Shuli?" "Yes." "He did not want to owe anyone a favor. Mom said that you can't owe anyone a favor." "Well, I'm not sure if he can catch them. Lobsters in the deep sea are not that easy to catch." Saint Ray was well aware of this because he had followed his uncle to the deep sea once, so he knew how strong the lobsters there were. However, he paused and said, "It doesn't matter even if you catch him. At most, we'll just pay him some money as a labor fee. Big brother is smart. This is good. We're not freeloaders." Rui chuckled when he heard that. After that, the three children began to eat. The waiter at the side listened to the conversation between Ruishing and Rui's and was simply confused. Whose brat was this? How could he be so bad? He was simply full of evil tricks. Not only did he treat an ancient martial arts powerhouse as a coolie, but he also had to pay them. Wasn't this a waste of his money? Chapter 3081. Helping others is a pleasure, too. After thinking about it, the waiter felt a deep sympathy for the ancient martial arts expert who wanted to please the three-milk baby. It was not easy to take in a good disciple these days. By the time the middle-aged man and the young girl returned to the seafood shop, the three babies had already finished 10 lobsters. The waiter was deeply envious of the three babies' good appetites, but at the same time, he was a little worried that they would have an upset stomach. Fortunately, the third baby only ate lobsters. If there were any other seafood, they would have to be sent to the hospital soon. But now, the waiter was very suspicious. Could these three little kids still eat? It could be seen that although the ancient martial arts expert was in a somewhat sorry state, his harvest seemed to be good. That was because he was carrying a 1-meter-long lobster in each of his hands, and the young girl named Juan was also dragging one with some difficulty. It was really a huge lobster. The waiter and the customers in the restaurant couldn't help but sigh, but they also knew that the lobster was not caught for them. Sure enough, in the next moment, the middle-aged man couldn't help but immediately come to the three children and put on a gentle expression with a smile. "How are these three? They're not bad, right?" Saint Ray lifted his eyes and touched his little belly. "It's passable." It was much smaller than the one his uncle caught. It sounded passable. The middle-aged man knew that the other party was not satisfied. He was instantly depressed. And this was what he had caught with great difficulty. Just as the middle-aged man was secretly worried, he suddenly felt a weight in his arms. He looked down and saw a transparent plastic bag filled with coins in his arms. What was the meaning of this? The middle-aged man had a bad feeling. At this moment, Rui Jin, who had stuffed the bag of coins into his hands, explained with a cute smile, "This is your labor fee. You deserve it. Don't be polite with me. All I have is money." After giving his instructions, Rui Jin impatiently snatched the lobster from the middle-aged man's hand and dragged it into the kitchen. The scene of a pink and tender little person less than half a meter in size dragging two large lobsters nearly a meter in size into the kitchen was eerily exciting to everyone present. "Oh my, this little boy was born with divine strength." As for the weight of the two lobsters, no one present doubted it. Didn't you see that the girl was struggling to drag them? However, the little boy dragged the two lobsters away as if he was playing. Time seemed to have stopped. Everyone, including the middle-aged man, was stunned. After the middle-aged man came back to his senses, he quietly put the transparent plastic bag on the table and hid in a corner to draw circles. This detestable little rascal. What an evil fellow. He went to the sea to catch lobsters just for this little labor fee? As an ancient martial arts expert, he was not in such a dire state, okay? Seeing that his old ancestor was silent, or only felt the anger in her heart burst out. This is too much. They really went too far. When had they ever received such treatment? But now, he was humiliated by three little kids. The more Huan thought about it, the angrier she became. She rushed to Rui Sheng and Rui Ziyi, wanting to ask for an explanation. Who knew that before she could speak, Rui very cleverly snatched the big lobster in her hand and smiled, "Give it to me. It's heavy." The young girl was furious. She wasn't here to deliver lobsters to them, okay? But without giving her a chance to react, Rui's also dragged the lobster to the kitchen. Another one with innate divine strength. Everyone who witnessed this scene was once again dumbfounded. Seeing that his two younger brothers had gone to the back kitchen, Rui Sheng also went to the back kitchen. Normally, the back kitchen did not allow unauthorized people to enter, so as soon as Saint Rui walked in, he saw the chef in the back kitchen seem to be negotiating with his two younger brothers. Out of curiosity, he went over. "What's wrong?" Saint Rui asked with a holy look. "Big brother, this grandpa chef doesn't allow us to stay here." Rui Jin saw that Big Brother had come and quickly complained. The young chef, who was called Grandpa Chef, twitched his mouth. He was only 30 years old. He became a grandfather. What an unadorable child. "Why can't I?" Saint Rui asked, pretending to be confused. "Little friend, this is an important place in the kitchen. Unrelated people are usually not allowed to enter." The chef explained to the little boy patiently. "But aren't we already here?" Saint Rui said after thinking for a while. "It's a mistake for you to come in," the speechless chef replied with his eyes. "Big brother, we can't go out. What if he changes our lobsters? That's why we have to stay here and keep an eye on them." Rui Jin, who was afraid that her brother would be persuaded, hurriedly reminded her. The chef's face darkened when he heard this reason. However, Saint Rui nodded his head seriously. "It is possible, so we request to watch from the side. Little friend, we're a legitimate hotel. We won't do such a thing. Please believe in our hotel's reputation." The chef could only try to explain. Unfortunately, Saint Rui didn't believe him and pointed out a few recent cases on the internet. These guilds also claimed to be legitimate. This time, the chef had nothing to say. He really didn't expect that these three children were more difficult to deal with than the last. He really wanted to know how their parents taught them. Of course, the education method of the three milk children was obviously not suitable for ordinary human children. Lung Ruoxue and the demon would not tell him about it either. Hence, he could only sigh in his heart. Third baby was happy to see the chef making the extra-large lobster. When the fresh, tender, and delicious lobster was brought to the lobby, the guests in the hotel were instantly attracted by the fresh fragrance, and some even almost drooled. When the three saw this, they immediately protected their food path. "This is ours. Don't even think about it." In the face of the three's actions, the people who had originally wanted to take some of the money from the three little babies immediately dispelled the idea. It was not that they were afraid of angering the three little babies, but it was mainly because a certain ancient martial arts expert was staring at them covetously from the side. The three little kids ate happily, and the three giant lobsters were annihilated without any effort. While everyone was envious of them, they couldn't help but worry about their stomachs. They really didn't understand how the stomachs of these three little babies could hold so much food. Could this be the legendary Big Eater? After finishing the lobster, the three of them handed the bag of coins to the middle-aged man with great satisfaction. This time, they even gave him a little tip to prove that they had a good time. After that, the three of them patted their sleeves and left without leaving a trace. The middle-aged man felt even more depressed. Then, he also left with Huan. For half a month, the middle-aged man and Huan followed behind the three animals. Along the way, they followed the three babies to several cities, and every time they reached a place, the three animals would eat without stopping. The middle-aged man was in a good mood as he faced the three little foodies who had very good appetites. However, Huan was a little unhappy. She couldn't understand why the old ancestor had taken a fancy to these three little foodies. In her opinion, so what if these three little rascals had good aptitudes? At the rate they were eating, if they were really accepted into their faction, they would be eaten down sooner or later. She even suspected that their parents had chased them out of the house because they knew that the three of them could eat so much that they couldn't afford to feed them. Otherwise, Why hadn't they seen their parents after so long? However, suspicion was just suspicion. She did not have the courage to say this out loud. Otherwise, she would definitely anger the old ancestor. They didn't know what their highly respected ancestor was thinking, but he was actually having fun chasing after the three little kids. This seemed to have become the old ancestor's favorite game. The three little children did not avoid them. If they wanted to follow, then so be it. He would just take it as finding 2 free bodyguards for himself, and they didn't have to spend any money. This was a good deal. On a certain day, the 3 of them walked into a very famous breakfast shop to eat breakfast. This place was also the place that Rue Jean had been pestering to come to. There were many customers that day, and there was almost no place to sit on the first floor. The 3 children went to the second floor to find a seat by the window, and ate breakfast while looking at the scenery along the street. The middle-aged man naturally followed along with Juan, and sat down at a table not far from the third baby. After ordering the same thing as the 3 children, the middle-aged man's thoughts drifted away in boredom. The 3 children were also eating seriously. Suddenly, a man and a woman across the road attracted their attention. The couple seemed to be arguing about something. It was reasonable to say that the distance between them was not close since they were separated by a road. However, this small distance was nothing to the 3 children's hearing. Moreover, it was the first time they had seen a couple quarreling on the road. The 3 babies were excited to hear such a fresh feeling. They pricked up their ears and heard a certain woman in bright and beautiful clothes shouting, "Why don't you take a look at yourself? If you want me to be with you, it's impossible." Hearing this, the 3 of them looked down at the pie in their hands and made a decision to help. The 3 steaming hot pies flew out of the half-opened window, drew a perfect arc in the air, crossed the road, and landed on the woman's head with a bang. The passers-by who saw this scene and were lucky enough to hear the woman's crazy words were dumbfounded, and then they all laughed at her misfortune. "Now there's a pie in the sky, let's get together." A passerby jeered. A certain woman trembled in anger when she heard this. Her exquisite makeup had been ruined by the greasy pie. More importantly, the pie was still very hot, and she screamed immediately. A certain woman was jumping up and down on the road, trying to drop the pie on the ground. Unfortunately, the pie seemed to have grown on her head and she couldn't get it off at all. A certain woman was so angry that she shouted at the man in front of her, "Are you blind? You don't even know how to help." In fact, a certain man wasn't blind. He was just scared silly by the pie that fell from the sky, so much so that he couldn't react for a while. Chapter 3082. We've taken it for real anyway. 1. When the man finally reacted, he quickly went forward to help pull the pies off the woman's head. However, he only realized that the 3 pies seemed to have grown into her hair. When he pulled them, the woman screamed in pain. He was so scared that he trembled and couldn't help but let go immediately. Looking at the pie that was steadily on a certain woman's head, a certain man was conflicted. He didn't understand how this could happen. Was the pie that sticky? At this moment, the passers-by could not help but continue to jeer, "Get together! Get together!" When the woman heard this, she was so angry that the veins on her forehead were popping. However, she was on the verge of a mental breakdown because of the few pies, so she did not have the time to refute. As for the man, he was covered in cold wind and cold sweat. He knew that no matter what the outcome of this matter was, it was impossible for him to be with a certain woman. Moreover, he suddenly felt that the goddess in his heart seemed to be nothing more than this. All along, a certain woman had been beautiful, noble, and refined in his heart. Although she was a little willful, it was not a big deal. After all, beautiful women all had personalities. But now, seeing a certain woman acting like a shrew in the market, he was very disappointed and his heart turned cold. However, the woman did not know what he was thinking and continued to scold the man as usual. Even the passers-by could not stand it anymore and looked at the man with more envy than sympathy. At this moment, the 3 cats sitting on the second floor of the breakfast shop began to frown again. The 3 babies hated this kind of woman who thought that she was invincible just because she was beautiful. After thinking for a while, The three babies looked at each other and smiled tacitly. Then, they grabbed the big white porcelain bowl in front of them and threw it out of the window. Not long after, an even louder scream came from the other side of the road. Hearing the screams, the three of them continued to eat their breakfast as if nothing had happened. At the same time, the other side of the road was in a mess. Other than the screams of women, there was also the shock and disbelief of the crowd. The passers-by wanted to know how it felt to have three large bowls stacked on top of one another. More importantly, the three large white bowls that fell from the sky were now very stable on top of a certain woman's head. No matter how she jumped, the three large bowls would not fall. Not only that, the bowls were originally filled with hot mutton giblet soup, but at this moment, the soup was fed to a certain woman's clothes. The man opposite a certain woman was dumbfounded. He had seen with his own eyes three large white bowls being placed in front of a certain woman. First, the soup in his bowl was poured on her body, and then the soup landed on her head one by one. The man was unable to react to such a fantasy and could only look straight ahead with a dull gaze. It wasn't until a certain woman kicked him in anger that the slow-witted man reacted. However, when he saw the big bowl and pie on a certain woman's head, he didn't know what to do at all. It wasn't until the bystanders reminded him that the man remembered to take the woman to the nearest hospital to solve the problem. After the man and woman left, many passers-by who were interested in this matter also followed to see how the situation developed. In the dining room, stood beside the three with an angry face. The three of them completely ignored her and continued to eat and drink. Seeing that she was being ignored, Er's expression became uglier and uglier. Following that, she snatched the bowl of soup from Rui Jin's hands and shouted, "Eat! You only know how to eat. Grandma, please return the bowl to me." Rui Qiao glanced at and said indifferently, "Oh grandma." Although it was not the first time that had heard these three words, but every time she heard it she would be provoked. In addition, she was in a fit of anger at the moment, so her anger was immediately aroused, and she continued to roar at Rui Chen, "Uneducated brats, is this how your parents taught you? What's wrong with our parents?" Rui Jin didn't understand. He had his food taken away, so he should be the one angry, right? Why was this old woman even angrier than him? He even mentioned his parents. What happened to his parents? What did it have to do with this old woman? Didn't your parents teach you to be polite to others? Asked, suppressing her anger. Of course I've taught him. But Ruikio's pretty little face was filled with question marks. He still didn't understand. Then why are you guys still calling me grandma? Shouted at the top of her voice, not caring about her image. You're a grandmother. Rui Jin said honestly. What right do you have to say that? Said angrily. There's your age. Saint Rui interrupted. That's right. She's already in her 50s. No matter how she acts young, she's still a grandmother. Rui's mouth was even more poisonous as he directly said. Sure enough, when he heard this, Er's face turned even uglier. His heart was filled with shock. How did these three little brats know? She clearly looked like a young girl. It should be known that people who practiced ancient martial arts, regardless of gender, were much younger than their actual age. As for although she was over 50 years old, she had never gotten married and had children, so she had always treated herself as a young girl. She had even forgotten her own age. In addition, she had been outstanding since she was young, so no one dared to mention her age in person. Now, her true age had been exposed by the three little children, and some of the guests on the second floor were looking at her. Only felt her face burning. Even though there weren't many people on the second floor, she still felt embarrassed. However, in front of the old ancestor, no matter how angry was, she still had a sense of propriety. Therefore, she immediately changed the topic and said, "That's not what I want to discuss with you guys now." "What's that?" The three babies were confused. "How could you do such a thing?" said disappointedly. "What did we do?" The three of them blinked their eyes, and their beautiful little faces were filled with innocence. "Don't you remember what you just did?" Seeing the three of them acting dumb, Hwan was even angrier. The three of them looked at each other seriously and shook their heads. You're really too irresponsible. You don't even dare to admit that you've done something wrong? Hwan Air's face was full of disappointment towards the three little babies, which made the three little babies simply baffled. What did we do wrong? Rui Xing felt that he was really kind, so he asked, how could you throw the pie and mutton soup out of the window? Don't you know you'll burn people? Hwan suppressed her anger and growled. The meat pie and mutton soup aren't very hot. How could they burn people? Besides, we're doing a good deed. Rui Xing said disapprovingly. His mother had always taught them to follow their hearts, so what happened just now was exactly what the three of them did from their hearts. He did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. You guys did a good thing by throwing such hot food out of the window? Hwan could not believe Saint Rui's words. Did she hear him wrong? There was definitely something wrong with this kid's three views. She couldn't let the flower of the motherland continue to be like this. At this moment, she was determined to save the three little babies and let them establish the correct outlook on life, values, and worldview from childhood. Otherwise, if this continued, she really couldn't believe what these three kids would become when they grew up. That would be too terrifying. Chapter 3083. We've taken it seriously anyway, too. Unfortunately, this was only her idea. How could the three little children follow her wishes? After hearing Hwan Air's words, the three little children could not help but roll their eyes. Then, Saint Rui, as the representative of the three brothers, said, didn't that woman want a pie to fall from the sky? We just want to help her. Not only that, but we'll also give her 3 extra bowls of mutton soup. So, that woman will definitely make a lot of money. Don't be too grateful to us. After hearing Saint Rui's sophistry, Hwan was a little confused. Was it like this? Was it like this? Did the other party really want a pie? Was this what it meant to be free lunch? Taking a deep breath, explained patiently, you three have misunderstood. He didn't really want a pie to fall from the sky. That was just an example. An example? What did that mean? Are they lying to us? Saint Rui's dark eyes turned and his face was full of disappointment. It's very possible. Rui Jin said seriously, and then took a bite of the pie, and secretly drank a mouthful of second brother's mutton soup. Whether or not she lied to us, we took it seriously. Besides, it's wrong to lie to children. So, old lady, what you should do is not to blame us, but to settle the score with that woman for us. How could you lie to such innocent and lovely people like us? Our fragile little hearts. He had been deeply hurt. Brother, my heart aches for you. Let's go home and find a corner to lick our wounds. As Rui spoke, he suddenly clutched his chest as if he really had a heart attack. When Rui Sheng and Rui Qiao saw this, they quickly stood up to support him. The three of them walked towards the stairs in desolation. Of course, before they left, Rui Qiao did not forget to take away the remaining meat pies. It was shameful to waste food. Seeing this scene, Hwan was once again in a state of confusion. She couldn't figure out how things had become like this. She was clearly educating these 3 little children who had twisted values. How did the 3 of them become the victims? It shouldn't be like this, right? Hwan stood rooted to the ground, dumbfounded. The middle-aged man, who had been watching and had no intention of helping Hwan, could only shake his head helplessly and chase the 3 children downstairs. The middle-aged man was very clear that with Hwan Air's intelligence, she really could not win against these 3 little children. Moreover, he did not think that there was anything wrong with the 3 little children. They were just children. They were all innocent and would naturally believe other people's words easily, even if the other party was just making an analogy. If the little child was serious, what could you do? Wasn't it too uncouth to argue with a child? The middle-aged man chased the 3 babies all the way back to the hotel where they had collapsed. The 3 babies stayed in their room the whole day and did not come out. This situation made the middle-aged man a little worried. Was he really sad? In fact, his worries were completely unnecessary. Although the 3 of them were in the room, they were not as sad as the middle-aged man secretly imagined. On the contrary, the three of them were very happy because they were watching the live broadcast of the hospital. The main character of the live stream was naturally the woman who had been given a pie. The woman's hair had been cut off, but the pie and the 3 large bowls were still on her head. They couldn't be removed, as if they were Siamese twins. The entire hospital was at a loss for what to do. More importantly, the doctors didn't dare to force their hands on her. They would even scream if they tried to touch her. In the end, the doctors could only stare at her. This situation made the 3 of them very happy, and they ate a lot of lunch. After lunch, the 3 of them began to take a nap. The 3 babies slept through the night. They didn't know that an old man was worried about them in the next room. It was not until there was a hurried knock on the door that the 3 were woken up and opened their eyes reluctantly. When she opened her eyes, the sky was already dark. Rui Xing saw that his 2 younger brothers were still drowsy and obviously did not want to leave the warm bed, so he had to open the door diligently. He opened the door and saw a group of people standing outside. In addition to Huan, there were 2 other people that Saint Rui was familiar with. They were the man and woman from before. There was also a group of strangers in white coats. Seeing such a huge lineup, Saint Rui understood that they had been betrayed. Needless to say, the one who betrayed them was definitely the self-proclaimed righteous old lady Huan. However, when it was time to play dumb, one should still play dumb. Rui Xing would not be so stupid as to admit that the pie in the sky was dropped by the 3 of them. "Who are you guys looking for?" Blinking his eyes, Saint Rui asked with an innocent face. The man and the doctors didn't know how to answer. None of them expected that the person who opened the door would be a little kid. How were they supposed to answer? "Where are the adults in your family?" Afraid that the woman would ruin his plans, the man hesitated for a moment before he quickly asked, "His lordship is at home." Saint Rui honestly replied. "Then can we go to your house to see your parents?" The man asked softly, afraid that he would scare the little boy in front of him. In fact, after seeing Saint Rui, he really doubted the words of the woman named Huan. Could such a small child really do such a thing? "We can tea." Saint Rui directly refused. The man who did not expect Rui Xing to reject him so directly was dumbfounded. However, the other party was a child, and he naturally would not get angry at a child. He even wanted to coax her with good words. However, a certain woman couldn't take it anymore and immediately shouted, "Little brat, quickly get your family's adults to come out. I want to settle the score with them." Hearing this, Saint Rui could not help but frown and said seriously, "My lord won't leave, and he never needs to leave. You, on the other hand, should get out of my sight, or you'll bear the consequences." Saint Rui was really angry. This annoying woman in front of him actually dared to ask his lord to get out? "You're quite bold, aren't you?" Did he really think of himself as a big shot? Originally, he had wanted to punish a certain girl a little and separate her from the pie and the large bowl. But now, he had changed his mind. This annoying woman would live her life with pies and bowls of fish. Anyway, wasn't a pie falling from the sky exactly what a certain woman wanted? He had done a good deed and fulfilled her wish. After thinking about it, Saint Rui coldly glanced at Huan, who thought she was the embodiment of justice, and scolded in his heart, "Idiot." For some reason, his glance made Huan shiver uncontrollably. However, Huan did not think that the chill in her heart was caused by the little boy in front of her. Therefore, after the shiver, she immediately pretended to be calm. When the woman saw that the little boy actually asked her to get lost, her anger suddenly increased. Just as she was about to scold him, the man suddenly pulled his arm with a warning look and whispered, "Do you still want to take the thing on your head?" The woman's body stiffened when she heard that. Then, she heard the man continue to warn her, "If you want to, then be good. Otherwise, I won't care about you." After all, she was the woman he had once loved. If he wasn't afraid of feeling guilty, he wouldn't have bothered to care about this matter. However, after he said that, a certain woman really became honest because she knew very well that with her current appearance, other than the man beside her, no other man would care about her. Seeing that the woman had become obedient, the man wanted to continue coaxing Rui Xing, but who knew that Rui Xing would not buy it at all, and directly slammed the door in front of everyone. The people who were locked outside couldn't help but look at each other. They were being despised by a baby. What do we do now? A certain woman hurriedly said. How would I know? It's all your fault. The man said honestly. Sister Huan, you have to help me. I don't want to be like this for the rest of my life. Knowing that the man had no choice, the woman began to ask Huan for help. Huan wanted to help her, but she couldn't do anything about the stubborn pie and big bowl. After thinking for a while, she could only make her own decision. Why don't we ask my ancestor to think of a way? Good. Sister Huan, he'll have to trouble you. A certain woman immediately tried to please Huan. Her careful flattery also made Huan Er's pride and arrogance swell rapidly. So, Huan Er's head was hot, and she led the group to the middle-aged man's room. Hearing the purpose of her visit and looking at the troublesome Huan, the middle-aged man's heart was in a dilemma. At this moment, he had never felt so regretful before. There were so many juniors in his family. Of all people, why did he have to bring an idiot? Not only was he stupid, but he also couldn't see the situation clearly. Didn't he know that he had been trying to please the 3 babies? He actually betrayed her. The most important thing was that the pie incident was too unbelievable and too fantasizing. If this matter caught the eyes of some people, the 3 little babies would be in trouble. Originally, no one knew about this matter, so naturally, it was impossible to find out that the 3 were involved. However, with Huan Er's actions, so many people knew that the pie incident was caused by the 3 little children. Now, he was afraid that he could not help to hide it even if he wanted to. Although he was also curious about how the pie and the large bowl had grown on a certain woman's head, as if she was practicing acrobatics, he would not ask. Who didn't have secrets? However, even if he didn't ask, it didn't mean that others didn't want to know. Once those people wanted to know, endless trouble would come to them. Thinking of this, the middle-aged man couldn't help but sigh. Then, he deliberately looked at the pie and big bowl on a certain woman's head. Although he wanted to laugh in his heart, he knew that this was not the right time, so he could only shake his head solemnly and said, I can't do anything about this. Senior, please help me. I don't want to be like this for the rest of my life. Hearing the other party say that there was nothing he could do, a certain woman hurriedly continued to plead with tears in her eyes like a frosted eggplant. I really don't have a choice. How about surgery? Doctors have the right to speak about surgery. The middle-aged man suggested as he looked at the doctors in the room who were looking forward to him. Chapter 3084. The 3 Busy Amusement Parks. 1. When the doctors present heard this, they immediately showed constipated expressions on their faces, and their hearts were even more miserable as if they had eaten yellow lotuses. They could not handle this woman. They had thought about the operation, but the woman refused to let them touch her. What could they do? Later, the woman named Huan came and said that she knew who did it. She also said that if they found the mastermind, there should be a way to get the pie and a large bowl from a certain woman's head. The doctors who were extremely curious about this matter also came out of their rigorous scientific attitude. Why did they go back to the surgery now after going around in circles? If they could really perform the surgery, would they still waste so much time? At the thought of this, the doctors' expressions turned even uglier. Seeing this, the middle-aged man couldn't help but ask, What? You guys can't do this surgery? The doctors smiled bitterly. This was not a matter of whether they could maintain a good relationship or not. Since he couldn't do it, then forget it. Otherwise, if something really happens, you won't be able to explain it to the patient's family. The middle-aged man thought for a while and then said. The doctors saw that he had misunderstood and were too lazy to explain. However, when a certain woman heard this, she immediately wailed and said, Woo, Senior, you can't leave me alone. Sister Huan clearly said that you would have a way. Huanters. Upon hearing this, the middle-aged man immediately glared at Huan and his face instantly darkened. Huan Er's heart skipped a beat when she saw this. Then she turned to a certain woman in anger and said loudly, "When did I say that the ancestor would definitely have a way? I only said to let the ancestor think of a way. Now that the ancestor can't help you, you can just think of other ways. Why do you have to accuse me?" Sister Juan. Seeing that Juan had suddenly turned hostile, the woman was a little confused. Seeing this, the man hurriedly apologized to Juan and then dragged the extremely reluctant woman out of the middle-aged man's room. Seeing that the main characters had left, the doctors naturally had no reason to stay, so they followed the couple and left. Seeing that all the outsiders had left, the middle-aged man's face darkened. When Juan saw the old ancestor's appearance, she was so scared that her little heart trembled, but she could not say a word to defend herself. She couldn't understand why this was the result. She clearly wanted to give the three little kids a chance to admit their mistakes. Now, it seemed to be her fault. Juan was very aggrieved, and her eyes gradually turned red. "Do you know where you went wrong?" The middle-aged man asked indifferently when he saw Juan's expression. Juan doesn't know. Juan sobbed, feeling wronged. Hearing this, the middle-aged man almost lost his breath and fainted. "You bastard!" He really wanted to curse. He thought that Juan already knew where he was wrong and repented. It turned out that she didn't realize that she was wrong at all, and instead felt wronged. At this moment, the middle-aged man regretted his judgment even more. Why did he think that Juan was talented and intelligent in the past? Now, it seemed that he was clearly an idiot and a self-righteous fool. Taking a deep breath, the middle-aged man calmed his turbulent heart and pointed out, "You shouldn't have gone to the hospital on your own and even betrayed those three little guys. Ancestor, I just wanted to give those three little fellows a chance to realize their mistake. Their behavior was wrong. They've already been brought up badly. While they're still young, we should work hard to establish the correct values in them. Otherwise, who knows what they'll do when they grow up." Juan bit her lip as she explained, her face looking even more aggrieved. She felt that there was nothing wrong with what she had done. "Don't meddle. I think those three kids are pretty good, at least they're much smarter than you." Hearing Juan's explanation, the middle-aged man was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. He told the truth. When Juan heard the old ancestor's words, she was even sadder. Did the old ancestor not understand her anymore? Was the old ancestor's view of the world also crooked? It could be said that at this time, Juan had already fallen into her infinite grievance mode. Fortunately, the middle-aged man did not know how to read minds. Otherwise, if he knew that Juan thought of him in her heart, he would be depressed to death. Who was the one who had a problem? Finally, the middle-aged man, who could no longer bear it, finally said to Juan, "Don't follow me anymore. Go back to your family first." Old ancestor, Juan's beautiful face was filled with disbelief. Old ancestor actually asked her to leave? How could she do that? If she really returned home like this, the people in her clan would definitely laugh at her. She couldn't just go back like this. Juan tried to salvage the situation, but the middle-aged man had already made up his mind. He then drove Juan out of his room. The next morning, the middle-aged man did not see Juan again, so he thought that she had returned to the family. Suddenly, he felt relieved. When he saw the three little kids, it was already close to noon. The middle-aged man's mouth twitched when he heard that the three of them had come out to have breakfast. Looking at the sun hanging high in the sky, the middle-aged man couldn't help but remind him, "It's almost noon now." "So what if it's noon? We just want to have breakfast." Saint Rouet glanced at the middle-aged man and said unhappily, It could be said that he was taking his anger out on her again. When the middle-aged man heard this, he could only silently curse in his heart. Breakfast? Being young was willfulness. The middle-aged man, who had tacitly agreed to the three children's behavior, wanted to have a good chat with the three of them. So, he ignored the obvious annoyance on the other party's face and shamelessly insisted on having breakfast with the three of them. The three of them looked at each other helplessly and ignored each other's existence. If you want to follow, then follow. During breakfast, the three of them fully adhered to the essence of not speaking while eating. Every time the middle-aged man wanted to speak, Saint Ray would throw a look at him, and the middle-aged man could only shut his mouth. When the other party finally finished his breakfast, the middle-aged man felt that he could finally talk, right? However, just as he was about to say a word, Rui Xing said, "If you want to be a follower, you'd better shut your mouth." Follower? The middle-aged man could not help but widen his eyes, and the corners of his mouth twitched even more violently. Alright. Although he didn't want to admit it, he was really a shadow. He had been to several cities with these three, It was really sad to think about it. "I just want to have a talk with you," the middle-aged man explained. "We're very busy. We don't have time to talk to you now." Rizzi replied. "So what are you guys doing now?" the middle-aged man asked. Why did he feel that these three kids were busier than him, an ancient martial arts expert? "We're going to the amusement park," Rui Jin said with a smile. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.